copy of which were disseminated to the members via email.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, may I just make certain corrections?
Yes, Honorable Defensor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on page 6, paragraph 5, on the question, Rep. Defensor inquired what were the consequences if there was no COE, and if so, can these NPLs without COE be placed in an SPV? Ms. Cube answered the BSP would have to further check the records. The reply of Ms. Cube that time, Mr. Chairman, was that from her understanding that indeed a certificate of eligibility must be issued by the Bangko Sentral of Pilipinas, but it was qualified by of her understanding. So that's page 6. And on page 8, in reply to Deputy Speaker Chensa challenge those who are alleging otherwise should have evidence to back it up. My reply to that, Mr. Chairman, is that number 1, that the BSP affirmed that there should be a certificate of eligibility, and that number 2, there is the money of 9 billion. I was speaking in Tagalog at the time, na yung 9 billion ay bumaba sa 3 billion. So that was the reply, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, that's all my those are all my corrections.
Is it all right, Honorable Defensor? I cleared the matter with Ms. Cube if that was the answer. She is here now. The first part of the minutes, you answered that sa COE, is that the correction?
Mr. Chair, good morning. Good morning po, committee members. With regard to the issuance of the COE, yes, at the time I said that it was my understanding that as far as it is embedded in the SPV Act, the COE has to be issued to eligible banks.
I now adopt the said amendments of the Honorable Defensor on the minutes of January 18 meeting. Is there any correction?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman. No more correction.
Do we move to not read the minutes entirety anymore? We move to dispense with the reading?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move to dispense with the reading of the minutes and move further for its approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As amended. So, approve the minutes of the meeting as amended on January 18. May I now direct the committee secretary to call the names of members joining us here in the Nograles Hall and those participating via Zoom.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and to the honorable members of this committee. We are joined here today at Nograles Hall by Representative Michael Defensor and Representative Alfredo Garbin, Jr. Via Zoom, we have the following members present: Representative Cesar Jimenez, Jr., Representative Adrian Abcas, Deputy Speaker Jose Chensa, Jr., Representative Siriaco Gato, Representative Angelo Barba, Representative Gil Acosta, Jr., Representative Yasser Balindong. We also have the Deputy Majority Leader John Nieto Yul Servo, and Deputy Minority Leader Stella Kimbo, and Representative Claudine Diana Bautista. Your honors.
Ms. Committee Secretary, please inform the committee who among our resource persons have responded to our invitation.
Mr. Chairman, the following resource persons are present today here at Nograles Hall. From DBP, we have First Vice President Rosemary Kilantag, Head of Special Asset Group. We also have SVP Rene Garland from the Office of the Corporate Secretary. VP Romeo Aguilar, Head for Property and Facilities Management Group. SVP Soraya F. Adjong, the Chief Legal Counsel. AVP Patricia M. Osoteo from Legal Services Group. From the Lopez Holdings, joining us here in Nograles, we have Attorney Enrique Quiason, the Corporate Secretary, who is also the Corporate Secretary for Sky Cable Corporation. From Maynilad, we have Randolph Estrellado, Chief Operating Officer. From SCC, we are joined here by Attorney Manuel Artiza, SEC General Accountant. From BSP, we have here today Attorney Chofilo Regadio and Ms. Mary Ann Cube. Via Zoom, we are being joined by the President and Chief Executive Officer of DBP, Mr. Manuel Herbosa, the President for Lopez Holdings Corporation, Mr. Salvador Tirona. From Sky Cable Corporation, we are joined via Zoom by Mr. Antonio S. Ventosa, the President. From Maynilad, we have Annette De Ocampo, Head of Government Relations. And may I also recognize as additional member in attendance via Zoom, Deputy Speaker Bernadette Herrera D. Your Honors.
For the information of our members and guests, we are live streaming via Facebook page of the House of Representatives. Good morning to the honorable members of the House of Representatives, officials of the House Secretariat, our esteemed resource persons, guests, and members of the media. Welcome to the resumption of the meeting on House Resolution 1040 on the DBP loan condonations, alleged loan condonations in favor of the Lopez Group of Companies. This is the second meeting of this committee, the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, better known as the House Blue Ribbon Committee. Our first meeting was exactly 1 month ago on January 18, 2021. Our first meeting ended with the resource persons being directed to submit documents and records requested from them by the House members present in the meeting. In the spirit of justice and fair play, the committee granted the resource persons reasonable time within which to submit these documents. But before we proceed, I would like to apologize to our beloved President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, for any inconvenience that was caused to him by reason of this committee's first meeting. Mr. President, I am sincerely sorry, and may I humbly request for your forgiveness for the inconvenience that we may have caused you by reason of these hearings. Mr. President, if I may be humbly allowed to briefly explain my side, it was never the intention of this committee to stop hearing this most important matter. Instead, the committee meeting was only suspended in view of the pending submission of documents by the resource persons. And to hasten the submission of these documents and further impress the importance of this issue, this committee issued Subpoena Duces Tecum last Thursday, February 11, to direct the immediate submission of these documents in time for today's meeting. If I may again respectfully emphasize, the hearing was never terminated, only suspended. Mr. President, it is most unfortunate that you may have been misinformed by people who wish to bring down Speaker Lord Alan Velasco and this committee. Rest assured, Mr. President, that these are farthest from the truth, because the Speaker and this committee are for the Filipino people. It is my utmost humble request, Mr. President, for you not to believe these allegations. The allegations that Speaker Velasco and this committee are protectors of the Lopezes are nothing but absolute lies made with malicious intent. If I may only share, I was elected chairman of this committee on November 25, 2020. And after that, I went immediately to work. This committee decided to hear this House resolution first among over 25 other pending resolutions as early as November of last year, for the primary purpose of finding the truth behind the DBP loan condonations in favor of the Lopez Group. I recommended this to the Speaker back in November, and the Speaker agreed to hear this first among the pending resolutions. If the Speaker was a protector, he would not have agreed to hearing this first. Our first meeting in January 18 was well attended, and there was a good discussion among our members, which led to the directive to the resource persons to submit documents before this committee can proceed. As we suspended the meeting to await the submission of these documents, now to force compliance, this committee issued subpoena last Thursday, for the submission of the documents for this second meeting. This was made clear to the sponsors of this House resolution, the members of the committee, and my fellow House members. I'm reminding everyone today, in order to invite all of those in this room, especially the sponsors of of this resolution to stand united with the committee in its quest for the truth and not to make allegations and insinuations to bring doubt the speaker. We are all for the truth. That is the only thing important to this committee. To end, let me again remind everyone that as chairperson of the House Blue Ribbon Committee, I will always be for the truth and I will always be for the people. We will uphold accountable any officer or entity who has done corrupt acts against our people. We enjoin the sponsors to stand united with the chairman and this committee by providing it the documents they have admitted they have in their possession and to go to the very end to seek the truth. Thank you very much and a pleasant morning to everyone. Good morning. This is a continuation of the committee deliberation of House Resolution 1040 that commenced on January 18. We suspended the deliberation to give our resource persons time and opportunity to comply with the submission of documents that the committee deemed necessary to address the issues referred to the jurisdiction of this committee. During the previous hearing, our resource persons were admonished to come prepared to the hearing, considering that they have been informed beforehand on the topics to be discussed and were provided with a copy of the subject resolution. We invited you on the premise that you have the information that will help the committee settle the issues subject of the inquiry and eventually recommend necessary legislation thereon. Further on, the committee, upon unanimous vote with one dissenting vote, it's not a unanimous vote, with a vote to 17 to 1, in the special meeting held on February 11, 2021, approved to issue subpoena ducis tecum to compel DBP and Lopez Holdings Corporation to produce several documents pertinent to the subject of the inquiry. They were given until yesterday to comply. And may I ask the committee secretary to report the compliance of this subpoena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable members of this committee, the subpoena ducis tecum, which were approved last meeting of the committee on February 11, 2021, was duly served personally through our Sergeant at Arms, and the copy of the subpoena ducis tecum addressed to Mr. Torona at his address at 16th floor North Tower, RCBC Sheridan, corner United Street, Mandaluyong City, was received by the company's security officer identified as Mr. Raul A. Abustan, stamp of which, the receipt of which were stamped in the subpoena itself. For the subpoena ducis tecum addressed to Mr. Herbosa of DBP, it was personally served at his office located at Senator Hill Puyat Avenue, corner Makati Avenue, Makati City, which was received by a certain Mr. Bernardo T. Cotas, staff of the Office of the President and CEO of DBP, on the same date at 14:10, which is 3:10. Yesterday, Your Honors, the committee secretary received the following documents from Lopez Holding Corporation in compliance with the subpoena. First, we have with us, with the committee, the Corporate Rehabilitation Plan of Maynilad Services, Inc., the Corporate Rehabilitation Plan of Bayantel, the Corporate Rehabilitation Plan of Central CATV and now Sky Cable. For the requested contract of loans, we have the copy of loan agreements executed by DPP with Benpress Holding Corporation, a copy of the loan agreement executed by DPP with Maynilad Water Services, a copy of the loan agreement executed by DPP with Bayan Telecom, Inc., and a copy of the loan agreement executed by DPP with Central CATV, Inc. We also have the information on the collateral for loan agreements with Benper Corporations, with Maynilad Water Services, with loan agreement with Bayantel, and the Central CATV Inc. They have substantially complied with the subpoena, Your Honor. And the same were the members were provided with the soft copy through their respective emails, Your Honors. For the DBP, they have submitted in compliance with the subpoena. They have submitted various board resolution relating to the loan agreement with Bayan Telecommunication Inc. Various board resolution with respect to the Benpress Holding Corporation loan, also with the Central CATV or the Philippine Home Cable Holding Inc. Also with various board resolution related to the Maynilad Services, Water Services Inc. loans. And also with respect to the request for the copy of loan agreements, may I quote in their submission that with respect to the loan agreements and other closing documents relating to the loan accounts, they stated that the Lopez Group, prior to the transfer sometime in 2007 to 2008, the bank has turned over these documents to the STB pursuant to subsection 3.06 of the ASPA. Okay. For the requested document under the subpoena, which is the DBP detention policy, they have submitted the DBP records retention and disposal schedule 2004. And they also provided, as stated in the subpoena, the contact details of Philippine Investment 2, Philippine Investment 1, and Philippine Investment 2. Your Honors.
The submitted doc.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Honorable Vice Chair Johnny.
may I inquire from the COMSEC if all the requested documents were submitted? Wala bang kulang? Kompleto ba?
May kulang eh.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the subpoena addressed to the Lopez Holdings Corporation, they have fully complied with the submission. But with respect to the DBP, they explained that the loan agreements we requested and other closing documents were relating to the loan accounts were already transferred to the STB pursuant to subsection 3.06 of the ASPA, Your Honors.
So, Mr. Chair, how can we access these documents if they are saying that they have already submitted it to another entity? How can we access these documents?
This will be part of the proceeding, Honorable Pimentel. We will discuss it further with the sponsor on his next course of action when he reviews the documents. We will require it from, I think, Lehman Brothers, but Lehman Brothers has already closed. The next entity that bought Lehman Brothers is, I think, Namura. Namura, ano?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a quick question to the DBP. Nag-submit ba kayo ng documents regarding the MWSS board resolution approval?
To the main.
Kasi I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Ang dami kasi sinabit na documents eh. Hindi yung klaro kung nandun yung approval sa MWSS loan application. Number one. Number two, were documents submitted as regards the that
Okay.
particular loan
Yeah.
application?
Can we ano to that for the interpolation phase?
Yes, no, Mr. Chairman, just I will not interpolate. I just want to know if they submitted.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Attorney Gerlan.
Yes, sir. Regarding the question of Honorable Congressman Defensor. Yes, Mr. Chairman, you have submitted the board resolution pertaining to the approval of the
loan agreement.
Clean Bridge Credit Facility of 1 billion in favor of
Okay.
Maynilad Water Services Inc. Sir.
Yung ano nyo, yung sa waiver and penalties, yung winave ninyo, You know, Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm raising this, kasi kita mo binasa ko lahat ng documents, hindi ko yung nakita. But now they're saying it's there. I'm not sure when the subpoena was issued out. The point I'm raising, Mr. Chairman, gusto ko malaman kung mayroong deliberate effort to conceal, na itago yung mga isyong to. Kung may deliberate effort na alisin tong isyong to.
I am also in your camp, Honorable Defensor. In fact, later I will ask the President, Mr. Herbosa, a question related to your query. But I'm also doubting that their compliance is staggered. They do not give everything in one blow. It's a very sad fact that we have to undergo this process, that the documents are given to us in piecemeal. So,
Then, Mr. Chairman, if that is the case, at may deliberate effort talaga to hide this, and I will later on in my presentation prove my points, I will move to call the DBP in contempt. I'm sorry, DBP, pero pagka ganyan kasi yung ginagawa, na kinukonsil ng documents at tinatago, hindi maganda para sa committee yan. And Mr. Chairman, again, I'm sorry, but officially, you already issued a subpoena.
yes.
Pagka
I
po
did.
ito hindi sila nag-comply o nagtatago o dinadaan ng pagbibigay ng dokumento, it is now already a challenge to this committee, to you as chairman, and to the collective membership of Congress. Sa atin na po lahat, pagka ganyan na yung nagiging postura. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Defensor. We will now proceed with the interpellation of our members. And may I again state our ground rules.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Chair,
Congressman
before
Rani.
we proceed with the interpellation, I just would like to, this is just a manifestation in support of the comment of Mike Defensor. Actually, there are grounds for citing them for contempt. One of our rules is not answering truthfully. That is a ground for a contempt, no?
Okay.
Precisely because I believe that.
Are you making a motion already?
No, not yet. But I'm just laying the ground, Mr. Chair. No
Okay.
further comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. I'd like to ask first to resolve this issue. DBP President Emmanuel Herbosa, are you on Zoom, sir? Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor,
Yes.
Chairman Mike, and hello to our honorable congressman. I'm here. I've been listening in
Yes, sir.
at your service.
This, as Honorable Defensor said, we need to protect the integrity of the House. And as committee chairman, I am totally agreeing with him. As you can see, the committee has undergone some allegations. So you remember in the last hearing, you committed to give all the documents possible in 1 month's time. And the compliance as checked by our COMSEC is not totally 100%. And I only have one question, two questions.
Yes.
The first is, are you aware of any employee or officer that reported to Malacanang that you have already 100% fully complied with all in the last month after the hearing? Are you aware? Because there is a report to Malacanang that the committee, we reported that the committee cannot proceed. It's all in open hearing that cannot proceed without the documents because the documents are vital to the conduct of this hearing. And it was reported by DBP to Malacanang that you have fully complied all the documents. So it's not in your court. The ball is with Congress. Are you aware of that, Mr. Bosa?
Your Honorable Chair, everything that goes out of DBP, insofar as my management team is concerned, is known by me. So to my knowledge, there's no one in my management team who has gone to Malacanang and made that manifestation. Now, to
DOF
address...
family. DOF family.
I don't know if there's anyone from the DOF family either. We are an attached agency, but pretty much when it comes to management matters, the buck stops with me.
Yes.
And
So you're
if I may
denying that.
also, yes, sir.
Yes. So you're saying that nobody informed Malacanang that we already have all the documents, and you are wondering why we cannot proceed since we already have all the documents. So there's no thing like that.
No
No.
one, yes, let me clarify. No one in my management team, to my knowledge, went to Malacanang for that manifestation. Now, if you're inquiring if you've got all that we have, I'm giving you that commitment, as I have said before, that what we have, and I think we've given you even more, are with you right now. Beyond that, I'm very, very sorry that
Okay.
in spirit, I'd like to say that we have been obedient to the due process of this honorable committee.
Thank
Beyond
you.
that, there's nothing more, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Herbosa. Thank you for your substantial compliance. Second question is that in in your what do you call this? I don't know if you watched the press conference of the presidential spokesperson, because as of now, as of this time, after the last hearing, I'm still puzzled. I'm asking you now point blank, of the loans of the Lopez Group, is there collateral involved in those loans? Yes or no?
I think there was some collateral. If I recall there was some collateral, but as I said, in the granting of the loans to the Lopez Group at the time, it was all on the project merits, which we continue to do so.
Okay.
We continue,
Thank you.
excuse
Thank
me,
you, sir.
to apply the same credit standards.
Thank you, sir. We will now proceed with the interpellation from our members. And may I again state our ground rules. Interpellations should be limited to the issues raised in the subject resolution, and members should refrain from asking questions already answered. Interpellators is given 20 minutes per round to ask questions or state comments, manifestation, and answers will be included in the time allotted. We will recognize interpellations on a first to register basis. We have a Viber group, or you can confer with the COMSEC, and that is all. So first on the list is the sponsor and co-author, the Honorable Michael Defensor of Anak Kalusugan. You are recognized, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to give way to the others because I will make a presentation later on. If the others would like to ask first, I'm willing to be next in line.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Honorable DS Marcoleta.
thank you very
You are
much.
recognized.
Thank you. This is my first time to attend this meeting, and prescinding from what I heard from my colleague, he is at a loss of something. I think he needs more information. What information in the first place did we ask DBP to be submitted before this committee, Mr. Chair?
Pagkaklaro lang po, Mr. Chair. Deputy Speaker Marcoleta, I'm not at a loss. I just want to know if they submitted the documents I will present. Kasi po, pag yung hawak
No,
ng
but
dokumento
if-
napakita ko at
if
wala
we-
sila,
If we have not
itinago
asked
nila sa
them,
atin yun. Yun po ang pinapoint out ko.
if we have not asked them the information that we wanted, they may not be able to.
No, it's
Present
all
to
in the subpoena. It is itemized, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Because I am not an accountant, Mr. Chair, but I made a little review of all the voluminous documents. It seems to me what they have submitted, and of course, what they have concluded in those documents are all post facto, meaning to say they've been observed. Nangyari na yun eh. What we're saying, are things that are supposed to be a priori. For example, meron ba tayong hiningi sa kanilang breakdown ng mga utang ng mga Lopezes? That's very important. The terms and conditions of each and every loan, halimbawa po yung interest rates, amortization schedule, refinancing, grace periods, collaterals, kagaya po nung tinanong nyo kanina. And then I'd like to see whether there was a modicum of effort from DBP to collect. Hindi lamang po best effort. DBP should be able to explain to us the loan agreement. Doon po natin makikita. Sapagkat bago nila masabing uncollectible yun, meron pong, binabasa ko yung position paper ng Central Bank. Merong standard pala yun. Is there a modicum of effort from the DBP that they collected really? Kasi debit credit lang yan, sir. So, tiningnan ko, Mr. Chair, malinis ang pagkakagawa. Pagka ganun, wala tayong makikita. Until and unless they are able to provide all this. Salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are you registering for the interpolation so that we can list you, sir?
Mr. Chair, pag natapos na po ang lahat kasi
Okay.
makikinig
The
muna po ako.
next on the list, may I recognize the Honorable Pido Garbin of Ako Bicol Party List.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is also my first time to attend this legislative investigation in connection with this outstanding loan, or no, the loans that was allegedly write-off or condoned in favor of the Lopezes. But I need some clarification with regard to the facts that were outstanding before or during the time when it was disposed of in the Pablo. So my questions will all be centered to the DBP, and if possible to the Lopez Group of companies, if they will be able to answer some of my questions. Now, to the DBP, Mr. Chair, the 1.6 billion of the Lopez Group loan mentioned in the House Resolution 1040 is part of the 10 billion to 12 billion portfolio of a non-performing assets, which the bank decided to dispose through a book, say. Isn't it true? Attorney Garland, can you please affirm to this committee? Are you the legal counsel of the
Attorney Adjong is the
Attorney
legal
Adjong?
counsel, sir.
Sir, good morning. Good morning, Chairman. Yes, sir, I am the Chief Legal Counsel of DBP.
Yes.
And yes, it's part of the bulk sale, sir.
So, meaning, when the DBP decided
So
to...
sorry to interrupt, Honorable Garbin, but I was reminded by the COMSEC to do some admin matters first. Just a short manifestation. May I remind the resource persons who have already taken their oath that they are placed under the same oath. For those attending for the first time, I will direct the committee secretary to administer the oath for our new resource persons invited today. So may those who are attending first, attending now, just now, please stand up. COMSEC. And then also in Zoom.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this congressional inquiry, so help you God? Thank you.
Sorry, Honorable Garbin, you may now proceed.
So, to continue, Attorney Adjong, so ang sinasabi niyo ho, yung 1.6 billion na loan ng Lopez Group was just part of the DBP's portfolio of non-performing assets that was disposed of under the framework of the Pablo. Am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And under Republic Act 9182 or the Special Purpose Vehicle Act of 2002 or the SPB law, magkano ho yung total amount na dispose nyo ho under the framework of the SPB law. As you have said earlier, yung 1.6 billion ay parte lamang ng ng uh, ng portfolio nyo of the non-performing assets.
Sir, there were actually 9 asset pools. I'm going to the details. Not all were given certificates of eligibility. So out of the 9.55 billion assets were transferred in 2006, around around 4.7, sir, were given COEs.
Correct this statement if can you confirm or may you please correct this statement if this is the truthful facts of the one that was reported by the Philippine Star. The DBP has sold to international firm Lehman Brothers Asian Investment 9.56 billion worth of non-performing assets to help cushion the effects of the stricter banking regulatory measure to be globally imposed. Now, of the sold NPAs, 5.8 billion were classified as non-performing loans, while 3.74 billion were real and other properties acquired. Now, DBP has 7.4 billion worth of NPAs and 4.76 billion worth of real and other properties acquired, or RUPAs. Is this correct?
Sir, may I ask the account officer to confirm the statement,
Yeah.
sir?
Your Honor, well, we sold 9.556 billion of non-performing assets, of which NPLs are 5.819 billion, and acquired assets of ROPA is about 3.736 billion.
So meaning the total NPA portfolio amounted to 9.6 billion. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And out of the 9.6 billion, 5.73 billion are the non-performing loans.
5.82.
5.82.
Yes.
How about the ROPA?
3.74.
3.74. And this was all sold to Lehman Brothers.
Yes, it's sold as one portfolio.
Okay. So ang tanong ko dito, kasi yung 1.6 ay parte lamang ng kabuuan na almost 9.6 billion. Tama po ba? Pangalanan nyo ho, sino pa yung mga top borrowers or sino kung maaalala nyo, kahit hindi yung top, yung included doon? Kasi yung 1.6 is just 1/6 of the 9.6 billion. We're speaking about legislative investigation in aid of legislation to really prove whether or not this disposal under the SPB law unjustly benefited not only the Lopezes, but the entire conglomerates or entities that benefited from the framework of that SPB law. Eh dapat isama natin lahat, hindi lang yung 1.6 billion na kumbaga 1/6 lang ito ng 9.6 billion. So, pwede ho pangalanan nyo dito sa komitiba na ito?
Matagal na po kasi yung the transaction has been like so many years. I can't recall.
Can I interject? I think in the last hearing, ask for a list of the top 20 borrowers from that 9.6 billion. The committee has not been furnished of those top 20.
With all due respect, sir, our board of directors asked us to explain that the other accounts in the top 5 are not part of the resolution, sir. So
They refuse to comply.
But this is an legislative investigation in aid of legislation. And when you speak about premises, conglomerates, entities who benefited from the framework of SPB law, remember, this is only part and parcel of the NPAs that was disposed of under the framework of SPB law. So dapat preparado ho kayo dito. Bakit to?
sir, our board, in the discussion of the board, it was explained that only of the top 5, only 2 are belonging to the Lopez group, sir.
But I now make a motion, Mr. Chair. In fairness to other conglomerates and entities who availed of the framework of SPB law, they should also be included here. Because when you speak about, sabi ni Kong Mike, this is people's money that should have been used in other wealth programs and the projects of the government. Eh dapat kasama yung, hindi lang yung 1/6, kundi yung top 20. I mean, we would be screaming or we would be baka mapagbintangan tayo dito that we're protecting some of the other conglomerates and entities while we're investigating this 1.6 billion, which is only 1/6 of the NPAs that was disposed of under the SPB law. Dapat sama-sama. And not only that, I think it is not only DP who availed of the framework under the SPB law. Meron din Land Bank, di ba? The PDIC. Sama-sama natin to dapat. And other commercial banks. Isama na natin dito. Dapat, Mr. Chair.
Hello?
Lest we will be accused of protecting other companies or conglomerates who are similarly situated, who also availed of that framework under the SPB law.
Mr. Chair, to remedy the situation, I think the Honorable Garbin should ask permission from the author, Mike Defensor, whether or not he wanted to reform his resolution to include. Di ba kasama ka sa author, pare?
Mr.
Kasama ka rin,
Chairman.
DSS Marcoleta.
Ay, nauuna siya eh.
Now,
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, nagkaroon na sa Subpoena committee. While it is not subject of the resolution, it is related to the resolution. At ang punto doon, nagsubpoena na kami. Diba? I cannot understand, Mr. Chairman, bakit lalabanan yung subpoena ng committee as regards the loans. Because this was particularly raised by the chairman.
So is there a motion so that we can impel
I
them?
move for the previous question, Mr. Chair.
Which is
To include those conglomerates and entities
do you have a second?
who avail of the same framework under the SPB law, meaning the 9.6 billion in totality, hindi lang yung 1.6 billion.
To formalize, Mr. Chair, because you already requested this last time, at kung papayag po si Honorable Garbin, ang motion na is to subpoena, to issue a subpoena to STECOM of the list that the Honorable Garbin is requesting and was previously requested by the Chair. I so move, Mr. Chair.
I second. Do you second?
No, that was my motion, which was amended by Honorable Defensor. So the motion is
Second?
amended
I
as,
second the motion of Congressman Garbin as amended by
Okay.
Congressman.
I direct the representatives of the Development Bank of the Philippines to confer with their top management that we are compelling them to submit the list of the top 20 borrowers comprising this 9.6 billion. And if
Mr.
they
Chairman,
fear,
Mr. Chairman.
if they fear violations of the bank secrecy law, we can have an executive session on those
Mr. Chairman.
documents. Yes.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
sir.
this is
I
Don
recognize
Gonzalez.
you, Congressman Don Gonzales. You are recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I think based on that discussion, not only DBP, but we will include also Land Bank of the Philippines. Because this is the money of the people.
Okay.
Alam mo, we want to
They're not
know.
yet invited in this proceeding.
No. I'm just saying, telling you, Mr. Chairman, and my dear colleagues, na para malaman lang natin yung mga top borrower. Kasi pera po ng bansa yan, pera ng mga Pilipino yan. Para malaman natin kung sino lahat ang may utang sa BBP at sa Land Bank. Para makapag-submit po sila ng listahan kung sino man yun. Kasi
Opo.
minsan, may utang na matagal na, hindi nababayaran. So,
Noted,
So,
Honorable
pwede, Mr. Chairman.
Gonzales. We will invite the President and the top management of Land Bank on the next hearing with the list of the top accounts for their SPAV that they availed through SPAV in the last 15 years. So we give more time.
I think that all, Mr. Chairman, not only 50 years, I think this current para alam din natin.
Yes, the past 15 years, the current and the
Current and 50. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
yes. We now continue with the time interpolating is the Honorable Garbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, I will defer to pursue my question on the issue of the loans that was disposed of under the SPB framework until such time that they all produce the documents being subpoenaed by this committee. Now, let me go to another point, Mr. Chair, of which my questions will be directed to the Central Bank of the Philippines, being represented by, can you please acknowledge who's representing Central Bank?
Chofilo Ragaggio, Mr. Chair, and Ms. May Ancube.
Thank you, Mr. Lagaggio and Ms. Cope. Now, in April 2020, the BSP governor, Governor Jokno, urged Congress to pass a measure that is similar to SPB law to help the companies hit by coronavirus. And in fact, the said measure, which was already passed upon by both houses of Congress and awaiting for the signature of the President, which is the FIS law, or the Financial Institution Strategic Transfer, which aims to cushion the adverse impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the financial sector by allowing the financial institution to once again dispose of their non-performing assets. How is this similar to SPB law?
Mr. Chair, good morning again. Sir, the FIST Act was modeled using the SPB Act of 2002. In fact, some of the provisions in the SPV Act has been carried over and further strengthened under the FIST Act. If I may share some of the examples that were enhanced under the FIST Act that was not that is not so much expressed in the SPV Act of 2002 are that there are now prohibitions on control and limit on ownership, wherein the ownership of the FIST corporation, the transferor financial institution must not have ownership of more than 10% or have direct or indirect control of the transferee FIST corporation. Another safeguard is against collusion and fraud. This means that in the transfer of non-performing assets, sir, the parties shall exercise the requisite due diligence, and any fraud, collusion, and irregularity shall be subject to the penalties of Section 24 of the FIST Act. And another measure that strengthened FIST compared to the SPV Act is that there is now a consumer protection provision in the FIST Act, sir.
We're now saying that there are sufficient safeguards under the Fish Act to avoid any irregularity in the sale of the non-performing assets by the banks. Ano ho yung na-observe nyo doon sa mga, because as you have said earlier, most of the features of the SPB law were
That's not,
incorporated in the Fish Act. Ano ho yung natingnan nyo o naobserbahan nyo na merong loopholes doon sa SPB law?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, the BSP examination, the BSP team that is now on loop in this meeting also includes our BSP team lead, who is part of the FEAST Act DWG. If with your permission and indulgence, sir, may I call on Attorney Noel, who is with us in Zoom?
Please proceed.
Attorney Noel, please, are you there in the Zoom?
Mr.
Please
Chair,
acknowledge.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Please answer the questions of the Honorable Garbin.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just want to fix my video, Mr. Chair. Sorry. Good morning. Yes. In relation to the question, Mr. Chair. Yes, there were weaknesses in the SPV law, in the old SPV law. That's why we deemed it fit to address these weaknesses in the FIST Act that was incidentally already signed by the President. So the list of
So napirmahan na pala to?
Yes,
Signed
Mr. Chair.
already?
Yesterday.
It was
Mr. Chair.
signed February,
Yesterday. Signed
February-
yesterday.
February 16, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yes,
Please
Mr.
proceed.
Chair. So, yes, precisely that's why there are new safeguards introduced in the FIST Act. Those were precisely the loopholes that were addressed in the new FIST Act, Mr. Chair.
So, assuming that the bank sells the non-performing loans and the non-performing assets under the FIS framework and turns around that it sells back to the debtor, will this be a violation of the FIS law?
Not necessarily, Mr. Chair, because there are several things that we should consider, especially that the original transfer from the bank to the SPV then is a true sale, and necessarily the sale back to the debtor would also be another contract of sale, and you have to consider whether there is fraud, collusion, or any irregularity in that latest transfer. In the absence of those fraud, collusion, or irregularity, there would be no problem there, Mr. Chair.
So, meaning
Yes, Mr.
the
Chair.
presumption is always above board in the absence of proven collusion, fraud, or any irregularity. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. And there's an express provision in the new FIST Act precisely punishing or safeguarding against fraud, collusion, or irregularity.
Now, how much haircut or discount can banks and other financial institutions give in disposing their assets under the just signed FIS Act?
If we base it on past experience, Mr. Chair, I think it can go as high as even 70% or 80%. But that is based on a study that was conducted by the PIDS, Mr. Chair.
So as high as 70%, is there nothing irregular there or fraudulent kung 70% yung binigay mong discount?
Not necessarily, Your Honor, because the parties will have to consider the cost of collecting also, and considering that these are non-performing loans or non-performing assets, there would be cost of maintaining these assets, cost of collecting. So all of this would have to be factored in, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And no further question.
Thank you, Honorable Garbin. Next
Mr.
to-
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Yes, Honorable Don Gonzales.
I just would like to interject regarding the non-performing loans and non-performing asset. Assuming we have this NPA and NPL, saan nating nilalagay yan? Like for example, DBP, Land Bank, hindi na pwede magbayad yung nangutang. So meaning to say, may 1 year na napalugit yan, and then pag hindi siya nakabayad, foreclose na yan. So saan nyo nilalagay yung mga NPA natin at NPL? That is asset. So I want to address that question to...
Please respond. After daw maging classify as non-performing loan, saan daw nilalagay yung NPL and
asset.
NPA?
Those non-performing loans and non-performing assets stays in the books until they are paid or written off or sold, transferred. That's the processor.
They are sold.
There's a book still in the books of DBP or the bank until we are successful in collecting the full principal with interest, or if we are not successful, these loans are written off. And the third is which the SPB gave us another way to recover some is to sale or transfer.
Thank you.
So Mr. Chairman, can I ask the representative from DBP, how much is our NPA as of now? Do you know if how much is our NPA and NPL at this point in time?
Current non-performing asset amount and current non-performing loan amount.
Yeah,
DBP.
current NPA.
Mr. Chair, good morning. The non-performing loan portfolio of DBP as of the moment is 7.5 billion pesos.
Okay, percentage-wise of the total loan, how many percent is that?
Yeah, may we just get back to you on
Okay.
that? We will just
7.5 billion, Honorable Gonzales, is the answer of the non-performing loans as of this moment.
So may I know who are those para malaman po natin yung non-performing na 7.5 billion?
Ano po ulit yun? Ano yung question, sir?
Siyempre, pag may NPA ka at NPL, alam natin kung sino yung mga borrower na yun, na sino hindi nakapagbayad. Minsan, may dasyon impago na ginagawa para malaman natin yung sequence, yung process na ginagawa ng DBP. So may know that, Mr. Chairman, kung sino yon, kung sino yung mga nagdadasyon impago. Minsan kasi nagdadasyon impago yan eh. Di ba? Kaya malaman po natin yung status.
DBP kindly respond to the question of the Honorable Gonzales.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, these are present borrowers of the bank, and we would like to request that we be allowed to get permission from the board of directors again, Mr. Chair. Because, with all due respect, these are...
I think, Mr. Chairman, that is...
Hello, yes sir. They would need to ask permission. Hello.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, can we have the executive session regarding this matter?
Yes, we will call an executive session to get the compliance from the previous motion of the Honorable Defensor that and Honorable Garbin that the list of the top 20 on the 9.6 billion, which is all already 15 years ago, should be given to the committee.
And the list of the NPA and NPL, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and the number 2 is, are you making a motion already? Honorable Gonzales, on the current 7.5 billion list, are you making a motion?
Okay, I can make a motion if any.
Yes, because the previous required documents, as discussed by the two honorable members, they wish to put it in a formal motion that we are requiring them, the DBP. So are you, this is for your representation. So are you moving?
Yes, I'm moving for a motion. I move that to furnish us the copy
Okay.
of the performing loans, performing asset of DBP, and who are those, but we can tackle that on the session.
I second the motion, Mr. Chair.
Yan pala, best friend eh. Hello, thank you. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. So may we require, in addition to the earlier documents or listing required, that in the next meeting, separate executive meeting, maybe via Zoom, that we need the list of the current 7.5 billion, maybe via Zoom with the selected members of the committee, including the sponsor, so we can run through the names of the list. If the DBP is now reluctant to give that list, maybe our commitment is to do it on a separate hearing that only the DBP and the members will be there on Zoom to protect the policies of your bank. Not to protect the persons involved, but to protect the policies of your bank.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, you speak of the top 20, but I think the real intention of the motion is really to produce and put up the names of all those entities, conglomerates, and companies whose loans were similarly disposed of based on the framework of the SPB law under that 9.6 billion. Of course, we cannot require them to produce other documents of those loans disposed of by other financial institutions such as Land Bank and the PDIC kasi hindi na nila saklaw yun. So 9.6 billion ho. Hindi lang yung top 20. Kung sino ho yung kasama doon sa 9.6 billion.
So hindi na top 20.
Hindi na top 20. Lahat na ho. Dapat sabay-sabay imbestigahan.
Oh, so dalawa po yan. Ang nag-request separate members in a motion, si Honorable Garbin and Mike, Honorable Defensor, is the 9.6, the total borrowers, the names of those borrowers. That was from 15 years ago. And this currently, as a separate request, a list of the NPLs by Congressman Don Gonzales, the 7.5 billion. So can we move on now? Next to interpolate is the Honorable Florida Lopez of
Thank you,
the
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Gonzales.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
point of clarification.
yes, DS Marcoleto, you are recognized.
Mr. Chair, I noticed that House Resolution number 1040 did not specify any period or time frame where the loans matter of this
Yes,
hearing
yes.
is concerned, and whether or not they were obtained on which period or what period. I noticed that the documents, loan documents submitted before us are between 1989 and 2006. Do we assume now that there are no loans prior to this? It seems to me that there was a period.
Because they availed of the SPAB after 2006, the DBP. So those that cannot be collected anymore, they lumped it up already, and this is the 9.6.
What about the loans taken
After
earlier?
Earlier,
Let's say
let's ask the representatives of DBP. Are there any loans of the Lopez Group before 1989 that you were not able to collect?
More specifically in the 70s
70s.
or late part of 60s. 70s.
Mr. Chairman, we just addressed the requirements under the subpoena, sir. So the earliest that we could produce was the 1989 loan
Okay.
granted in favor of.
Do you have a motion to subpoena records before 1989 loans of the Lopez Group before 1989?
I want to know, Mr. Chair, whether or not there are loans taken
Okay.
in the 70s, because if there are, probably they can also be subjected to the same inquiry, even without this Pablo, because just the same, these are people's money too, and probably an inquiry is also
Can we
in order.
request first the list of the loans of the Lopez Group before the 1989 timeline that you... Can you get back to us first after next hearing?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Representative Vice Chair Johnny Pimentel, you are recognized.
may I know from DBP, because you earlier mentioned that they are reluctant to furnish us documents with regards to the number 9.6 billion. Now, may I ask the DBP, are they capable of furnishing us these copies?
They already committed that they will go back to the board of directors, and our commitment to them, if they have policies or they have policies on bank secrecy, we will be in an executive session, members only, and the DBP to discuss that list. They committed already to discuss with their...
Is this, yeah, they committed to talk with the board members, but the board members have not committed to furnish us this copy. So
No, we will give a subpoena because the motion of the honorable defensor was a subpoena on this list, and the corresponding list of the 7.5 for the honorable Don Gonzales, we will also put on that subpoena. So there are two lists that we are waiting compliance. I direct the committee secretary, as approved in the previous motion, to
Mr. Chair,
prepare the subpoena.
I would like to appeal to the resource persons to make this hearing not so difficult, to cooperate with our inquiry. Because kung ganun sila nag-stonewall sila minsan, lalong matatagalan nito and we might be forced to cite them for contempt. So therefore, I earnestly appeal to the resource persons, especially DBP, to please cooperate with us, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pimentel. I duly support you on that plea that they comply and that stonewall our request. Next to interpolate is the Honorable... before we continue, I'd like to recognize the members on Zoom, the Honorable Sandro Gonzales, the Honorable Strike Revilla, Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Vice Chair Johnny Pimentel, the Honorable Vice Chair Jake Villa, the Honorable Member Aurelio Gonzales, and Honorable Minority Leader Caraps Paduano, Honorable Florida Robes, Honorable Ferdinand Gaite, Honorable Cyril Abueg Saldivar, Honorable Wilton Co, and Honorable Teodorico Haresco. And next to interpolate is the Honorable Florida Robes of the Lone District of San Jose del Monte. Ma'am, you are recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning to our fellow colleagues. I'd like to also make my manifestation with a query of Honorable Garbin. But for now, I'm not quite sure if most of my colleagues have questioned this. This is actually addressed to DBP. Did all the loans go through the same process as the loans being discussed for today? What percentage of the total loans does the Lopez represent? Do you have a copy of this and do you have a data of what you are asking? Kasi alam niyo, very important yun na malaman natin ng buong sambayanan kung kayo ba ay naging fair sa lahat ng mga nangungutang. Dahil ito po ay pera nga, ulitin natin, ng ating gobyerno at buwis ng taong bayan.
Hello, the percentage of the total of the 9.6, how many is percentage to the Lopez's?
of the total NPLs of the 9.6 of 5.82 billion, the Lopez's comprise about 1.67 billion.
No, how many percent? We know already the 1.67 billion. The Honorable Robes' question is percentage-wise. Wala nang papatapos nito.
About 17 point, about 17%. 1.7 over 9.56.
17%. 17%, Congresswoman Robes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I just like to make an appeal to the DBP that being requested by our colleagues, you might want to submit all of the people or all of the companies who have been given this accommodation. So lahat fair tayo kasi it's really hard na it might be small for others, but kung ang pera ng gobyerno ay napupunta sa tama, palagay ko everybody will be okay. Diba? So, Mr. Chair, yun lang po at maraming salamat. And to DBP, I just hope when you come back, bring all the things that we really need to know. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat po, Congresswoman, the Honorable Rita Robes. So, to inform the Honorable Robes that already has been requested, we will issue a subpoena for those two lists that we are requesting. So next to interpolate is the Honorable Ted Haresco of Aklan, Western Aklan. Sir, you are recognized for your interpolation. Honorable Ted Haresco. Wala na. Wala na. Sino susunod? Honorable Mike Defensor, wala nang mag-interpolate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon. Mr. Chair, if I may, I have a presentation. Gusto ko muna, bago ako magsalita, while they're preparing it, una ko sa lahat, kaya kanina ho, tinicheck ko yung documents. Ngayon ko lang nalaman na ngayong umaga lang sinubmit yung ibang dokumento. Ngayon lang ho. Yes, Mr. Chair. So, matagal na ho to, Mr. Chair, na sinabi. And in fact, ang hirap sa marami nating kasama na hindi sila nabibigyan ng guidance tungkol dito sa mga dokumentong to. Maybe Mr. Gerlam would like to react on my statement. Go ahead, please. Mr. Chair, with your permission.
Mr. Chair, we would like to clarify, sir, that our submission of the documents was made yesterday.
Yes, I acknowledge that majority of the documents, 95%, was received yesterday on, I think, 3:30 or 3 o'clock. But there was a few documents additional received this morning. I think those are the ones mentioned by Representative Defensor. Those are the same.
Yes, sir.
So those are the same pala.
Okay. Mr. Chair, just I'd like to clarify because I've been looking to the documents. Hindi ko po nakita yung tinatanong ko kanina. But Comsec Attorney Marivic was kind enough to point out the soft copy. Pero Mr. Chair, ang hirap din naman po that we're coming into the hearing and these are voluminous documents. Para malaman lang natin, para alam ng taong bayan, pagka pinagsama-sama natin yung mga copies niyo, siguro mga ganito kakapal yun para basahin natin. And mahirap pong basahin tong mga to, hindi ganun kadali dahil these are financial documents. And you really have to make an understanding, kailangan mong intindihin ano talaga tong dokumentong to. But at any rate, Mr. Chair, let me proceed with my presentation.
Let's proceed.
Yes. Mr. Chair, before I begin, gusto ko malaman, sino bang presidente ngayon ng Lopez Holdings?
Si Tirona,
Attorney.
Salvador Tirona. Mr. Salvador Tirona is on Zoom.
Yes. May I know the chairman? Because Mr. Tirona is the president. Who's the chairman?
Chairman is, I think, Lopez, Piqui Lopez.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the chairman of the board now, Lopez Holdings, is Mr. Federico Lopez.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, before I begin, gusto ko lang iklaro. Mr. Federico Lopez was not involved dito sa sitwasyon to. Bago na po itong Lopez na to. At yung pong DBP, nakaharap natin ngayon, I'm not sure kung sa legal department, they were there that time, pero let's say Mr. Herbosa and the others, Attorney Adjong, hindi rin po sila involved. I just want to put that for the record. In the same manner na si Mr. Federico Lopez, kilala ko sa business circle at maganda po ang pagkakilala sa kanya. I just want to clarify that in the same manner na yung si Presidente during the hearing was saying na naawa siya kay Mr. Mark Lopez and Mr. Carlo Katigbak of ABS-CBN dahil hindi naman sila kasama doon sa punot dulo ng problema. Having said that, Mr. Chair, gusto kong ipaliwanag na itong loans na pinag-uusapan natin was an offshoot of the investigation of ABS-CBN. Dahil ang punto ng Presidente dito, ginagamit o wino-weaponize ang mass media in order to seek favors, in order to seek, in this particular case, loans from the TVP. Ginagamit po yung mass media para gamitin, makautang, magamit para sa negosyo. Yan po yung naging unang punto nun na binabanggit ng ating Pangulo. No? And rent-seeking, oligarchy, these are the key terms used by the President. So if I may, the first part, I'll go by this step by step if the team can assist me on the presentation. The DBP loan investigation by the ABS-CBN Lopez Group of Companies. So I'll go through this step by step. Una po sa lahat, next slide please. Ang mga loans po na to, nagsimula noong 1995. Yan po ang loan, parang hindi makita ata, ng loan ng Bayan Telecommunications. Ito po ay isang syndicated term loan, $374.4 million. Ang ginamit na collateral dito ay estate mortgage on present and future real assets. Outstanding balance by 2006, so from 1995 to 2006, hindi po nakapagbayad ng 576 million. Pagkaklaro, hindi lang naman po sa DBP yan. Again, syndicated, marami pong nagpautang. Tama po, Attorney Quezon, ang aking paliwanag?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to refer that question to our resource person, Mr. Tirona.
Mr. Tirona, for the record, you may want to respond. Mr. Chair, with your permission.
Mr. Tirona, are you there on Zoom? Please respond to the question.
Yes, Your Honor. I did respond. Yes, that is correct.
So, pagkaklaro lang ho, hindi ito solely with the Development Bank of the Philippines. In May 1996, next slide please, umutang po ang Benpress Holdings ng 157 million pesos. Ang ginamit pong collateral, negative pledge over the assets of Benpress. Next slide. Ang Philippine Home Cable Holdings, o ito na po ang Sky Cable na sinasabi natin, 207 million pesos. Again, syndicated po to, pinagsama-sama, ang total amount was 450 million. At ito po ay under mortgage trust indenture, mortgage participation certificate. Yan po yung sa Sky Cable Corporation. And in the case of Maynilad Water Services, next slide please, ang loan po ibinigay noong year 2000. Ngayon po, kung makikita nyo dyan ang collateral, secured by joint and solidary signature of Benpress. DBP, ano pong ibig sabihin nito? Mr. Chairman, with your permission, if DBP Legal Services again could explain, anong ibig sabihin ng joint and solidary signature of Benpress?
Attorney Adjong, please respond.
Sir, it only means that the surety is solidarily liable for the loan obligation.
Okay.
So pag hindi po nakabayad yung borrower, then si surety is also considered a liable under the surety sheet.
Tama po ba, Attorney Adjong, na yung mga mismong kasama doon sa korporasyon, gumagawa sila ng garantiya kung sino man yung mga nandoon?
Surety, yes, Your Honor.
No, para ho maliwanag,
Yung-
naintindihan ho natin, pero yung taong bayan, para nakikinig at nanonood sa atin ngayon, kung ako po'y may kumpanya at direktor ako sa kumpanyang yon, pag pinautang ako ng bangko, bukod doon sa garantiya, bukod doon po sa pag-utang niya, ang garantiya ko ay yung pagpirma ko na pag hindi nakabayad, ako mismo personal magbabayad sa utang.
Kung sino po yung nag-execute ng surety sheet.
Okay. Sa makatuwid, tama po ba, Atty. Jong, laway lang to?
No, sir.
Ano
Sir,
pong collateral?
It means, sir, that we consider the net worth of the person or the corporation executing the surety sheet.
Okay, sige. Ang sinasabi niyo po, si Congressman Marcoleta, mayaman, nasa kumpanya siya, o hindi, ginagarantiyan niya. Pero ang ibig po sabihin nito, Atty. Jong, wala siyang ibinigay na bahay, wala siyang ibinigay na lupa, wala siyang ibinigay na kahit ano, o shares niya na para ginagarantiyan niya yung loan. Katulad po tayo, pag bumili ng bahay, naka-loan yung bahay natin pag umutang tayo. Pag meron tayong kotse, sasabihin natin pautang, ito po yung kotse natin. Sa pawn shop, pag ikaw may relo, may singsing, bibigay mo, para yung dito ho, walang ganon.
Yung
Atty. Jong, huwag mo
Yes,
naman
sir. Sir,
ikomplika.
I'm trying to explain, sir, that yes, he is liable solidarily
Yeah, I
with the
know.
borrower.
I'm asking is,
So in
meron
other
bang
words, sir,
collateral na pisikal? Meron
wala,
bang
sir.
singsing?
Not
Meron
on
bang
the-
lupa? Wala.
Not on a specific property.
Oh, parang sinabi po natin, may kumpanya si Congressman Marcoleta, sinasabi lang nyo, dahil nakita nyo mayaman siya, yung pirma niya sapat na para pautangin.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So sa makatuwid, at least in my interpretation, wag na po kayo, laway para sa akin. Walang ibinigay na collateral, yung kanya lang pagkatao ang ginamit
Hindi naman
niya.
laway, face value.
Face value. Face value. Tinagalog ko lang, Mr. Chairman.
Character loan, character loan.
Oh. I apologize to the members of the committee if face value may be the correct term. Now, I'll go to the next. Ito ho, tanong ko. Binigay niyo po ba yan sa amin, DBP? Minutes number 9, Resolution 0251. Nasa amin po ba yan? Wala. Ako na po sasagot, Mr. Chair. Wala po. Wala. And kaya ko po ito binabanggit, Mr. Chair, makikita nyo, nasa DBP yan. And yet, hindi binigay sa committee. Now, I'll proceed to the next. Next slide, please. Yan po ang resolution number 0219. Manila Water Services Special One-Shot Transaction, Clean Bridge Facility of 1 billion. Attorney Jong, ano pong ibig sabihin ng Clean Bridge Facility?
Sir, in general terms, it means that they are given financing while awaiting some other form of financing.
Yung pong bridge.
Yes,
Pero yung clean, ibig sabihin, walang collateral.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, ang ibig kong sabihin, nagbigay kayo ng 1 billion dahil meron kayong sinasabing, oh, may darating pala siyang pera. Di ba? Parang ganun po yung naging pag-uusap niyo dyan. Binigyan ngayon ng pautang in the year 2000. 1 billion po to. Alam nyo, Mr. Chair, sa aking mga kasama, ang hirap po umutang eh. Kahit na yung bridge facility, kailangan maglagay ka ng isang tinatawag na collateral o garantiya tungkol dito. Pero dito po linaw, in the year 2000, and this document I'm presenting to you right now was not given to us, Mr. Chair. It is there with DBP. Hindi po binigay sa atin yan. Now, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, tatanungin ko po, pwede po bang sinabi ng isang bangko, well, I guess the private banks, okay lang po yan. But for government financial institutions, na meron akong utang na darating, without collateral, pwede po sila magpautang? Bangko Sentral, Ms. Cube, magandang umaga po sa inyo.
Yes, good morning, Chairman, again. In practice, banks can actually provide loans that are not secured. So loans are actually classified as secured and unsecured, sir.
Yes. Ngayon po, Ms. Gube, if I may, Mr. Chair, di ba ho binibigay itong mga to for a bridge financing? Meron kang record talaga. Meron ka talagang pagbabayad. Hindi yung biglang nagkaroon na lang ng sumulpot, bibigyan ka ng 1 billion clean bridge credit facility. Because it is very hard to get a bridge facility. You have to have the track record, you have to have the net worth. In this particular case, you have to have the collateral. Is that not right, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair, if I may, at the end, it has to conform with the internal policies and procedures and credit granting policies and procedures of DBP. So the board and management should ensure that it conforms and complies with this criteria that they themselves have set.
So in this particular case, Mr. Chair, hindi nga nakapagbayad. So you can see that there was a mistake, Mr. Chair. Again, from BSP.
Mr. Chair, I regret I cannot comment whether there is a misjudgment on the grant of the loan because I don't have the facts, and it would be for DBP to reply to that if the grant of the loan was in conformance with the internal policies and procedures of the bank.
Thank you, Ms. Gube. Tama po naman. Just to be fair, you were not there in the discussion
Mr.
and
Chair, may I
the
interject?
presentation of documents by
Mr.
the
Chair, may I interject?
Lopez Group of companies as regards this particular loan.
Are you willing to?
Deputy Speaker,
Please, like to recognize the Honorable Marcoleta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam from the Central Bank, is it not true that Section 143 of the Manual of Registrations for Banks, MORB, sets forth the guidelines on credit risk management to ensure that financial institutions such as DBP have adequate and effective comprehensive credit risk management system? Ito po yung sa position paper ninyo. So in replying to the Honorable Defensor, meron po kayong guideline. Tama po?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have guidelines that are principles based, and the granularity of that should be laid down clearly and articulated in a manner that is understandable and implementable and feasible by the bank concerned.
That is correct. But the Honorable Defensor is trying to articulate that, there are certain loan proponents na wala namang collateral at hindi maliwanag, pero pero binibigyan ng ganun-ganun lang. How does this Section 143 operate pagka ganun lang kaluwag pala? Salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if I may ask the accounting group of DBP, yung pong 9 billion na loan na binabanggit natin because these were 1996 loans, eventually nagkaroon ng failure 2006. Magkano na value niyan ngayon? More or less. Based on inflation, based on the projections. Ang ano lang po, more or less a projection of what you want. 37% of the past value, 37%.
We have to ask our investment bankers to compute that, sir.
Would
Because
anyone be
it's
able to
like
answer that question?
future valuation. So
Thank you. Anyway, Mr. Chair, I would think it would be somewhere in the vicinity of 12 to 15 billion, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chair. Would that be a correct estimation?
No doubt, no.
Don't worry, a case won't be filed if you answered wrongly. It was just a...
Maybe you should apply the 2% per year inflation.
Okay, Mr.
You multiply it and you compound it. You will get the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, again, as I've stated, ito po ang mga dokumentong tinatago ng DBP. Next slide. Ito naman po yung nangyari. Minutes of the 2004 meeting, December 16, minutes number 39. Ito po ang mga members present. Ito, andyan ang chairman, vice chairman, and the directors. May tanong lang po ako. Chairman Anyagas was there? Tama po ba? Who can answer me? Corsec of the board.
Based on that document, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nanyagas was present in that meeting, sir.
Who else were present? Sino po bang nandun pa nung aprubahan to?
Like the same answer, Mr. Chairman, those named therein.
Can you state them for the record?
Yes, sir. The others present are Honorable Reynaldo G. David, who is the Vice Chairman, and the following members of the Board of Directors. Honorable Fernando T. Barican, Honorable Elidio V. Jimenez, Honorable Alexander R. Magno, Honorable Ricardo G. Nepomuceno Jr., Honorable Floro F. Oliveros, Honorable Joseph N. Pangilinan, and Honorable Ray Magno Tebes, Mr. Chairman.
And the others present?
Also present there, Mr. Chairman, are Mr. Jaime De La Rosa as consultant, Senior Executive Vice President Edgardo F. Garcia, Executive Vice President Carlos R. Cruz, Vice President Lutgarta C. Baquirad Peralta, Assistant Vice President Maria L. Ramos, and Attorney Jose Manuel I. Jokno, sir.
Would you know the personalities of those people? Like si Mr. De La Rosa is a consultant. Tama po, Attorney Gerlan?
Yes, sir, it appears from that document.
Yes. And Senior Executive Vice President po si Mr. Edgardo Garcia.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Executive Vice President si Mr. Cruz po.
Yes, sir. He was then the Chief Legal Counsel of DBP, sir.
Chief Legal Counsel. Then you have the Vice President, Mr. Peralta, Assistant to the Vice President. Is that correct? Assistant Vice President pala.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Maria Ramos. And then Attorney Jokno. Is this Attorney Chel Jokno?
I believe that is him, sir.
Bakit nandito rin siya? What is the classification?
I am not aware, sir, in what capacity he was present in the...
At any rate, Mr. Chairman, if I may proceed, next slide please. Ito ho ang nakakatakot dyan. Yung special transactions, letter D. Kasi mahaba po to eh. Minutes number 39, December 16, 2004. Ang nilagay po ninyo kanina, and I ask you, Attorney Adjong, di ba ho may JSS na pinirmahan? Joint Solidary Signature.
Yes,
Tama ho?
Yes, sir.
Number 1, tinanggal nyo yung guarantee. The bridge loan facility and peso loan facilities shall be deemed released, and the bridge banks and peso lenders shall have no further recourse against such benpres guarantees. Yan lang ho ang pinang-ahawakan yung collateral, tinanggal nyo pa. Is that correct?
Sir, based on the records available, it appears that the board...
Attorney Adjong, it does not appear. It was done. It was approved by the board.
It was approved, yes, sir, by the board of directors of DBP.
Exactly. Why? Yun lang ang pinanghawakan nyo, ba't nyo tinanggal?
I think you have to explain that very well.
I'm sorry, sir, but I would not be able to personally explain it as I was not present.
Who can explain it?
Sir, maybe the record, the
Maybe we could subpoena one of those present there, or we can invite first so that those present in that room can if they recall it.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Pero, again, no, Attorney Jong, pasensya ka na. Hindi naman ikaw to eh. Pero ang pinopoint out ko lang, ito lang ang pinanghawakan ninyo. As an institution, as Development Bank of the Philippines, can you imagine yung tanong kanina, meron naman sa Pablo. Tapos mag-waiver yung mga financial institutions, pabayaan natin yung private. Kanila yun eh. But for government financial institutions to do this, nakakatakot. Yung 1 billion na yun, From day one, laway. Because the only guarantee you had, yun lang pong garantiya na pinanghawakan nyo, tinanggal. Now, number 2, tingnan nyo po, unconditional waiver, default, accumulated defaults and penalty fees. Default and penalty fees. As of December 31, yung pong hindi nila pagbayad, may mga default sila, may mga penalty. 144 million, tinanggal nyo. Tama po ba, Atty. Jong?
Based on record, sir, it appears it was
Atty. Jong,
approved,
do not
sir.
say it appears because you were there and you know this. I mean, you
Sir,
are
I'm
there.
sorry,
in
I was
the-
not there po. I was not
I
present.
know. What I'm saying is, kasama kasi ito to institution. No? Again, Atty. Jong, hindi ikaw to.
For the
Pero
record,
tinanggal
sir.
ang default and penalty fees. Tama po ba?
Based on record, sir.
Based on record. So, Mr. Chair, again, I'm bringing this to the committee. Pagka ho tayo nagkautang, alam nyo, sa housing, ang daming ganyan eh. Lalo ngayong krisis. Hindi nakakapagbayad. Hirap na hirap po silang tanggalin yung mga penalties. Hirap na hirap silang tanggalin. Yung mga, may kung ano nung binabayaran po yan, pag hindi ka nakapagbayad, may interest penalty ka, meron kang mga defaults. Yung mga mahihirap po na bumibili ng bahay sa probinsya, dito sa atin, in fact, we had to go to Congress to request for a law para lang matulungan itong mga mahihirap. Pero itong ganito ho, 144 million. Ilang pamilya na ho yan? Ilang tao na po yan? 144 million, again, was waived by the Development Bank of the Philippines. Next slide, please.
Before that,
Yes, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair,
Yes,
I
DS Marcoleta.
think I will urge the Honorable Defensor to probably ask the regulator of the banks and quasi-banks, the central bank, what did the central bank do, or did the central bank know about this, considering that they are the regulatory agency?
I think they will answer the same thing they answered a while ago, that it's an internal procedure and policy.
But the problem, Mr. Chair, this internal policy affects the interests of the entire country and its people.
Yes, I
And
agree.
we-
That's why it is our job to correct this
Yes.
forever happening again.
Thank you.
For the record, Mr. Chair, and for the comfort of the Honorable Marcoleta, meron po ba kayong reply, Bangko Sentral?
Mr. Chair, as to the particular transaction that is being flashed right now or discussed, I am personally not privy yet, so it may be untimely to comment on the case at hand. But perhaps it would be helpful to say that we conduct on-site examinations, and part of our examination procedures is, of course, to look into the propriety of certain transactions of the bank if it is in scope in our examination.
Are you saying, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, does
Yes,
the
DS Marcoleta.
Given that kind of answer, are we made to understand that the central bank does nothing in regard to its regulatory function, like looking into the contracts entered by the debtor and the FIs involved? Because considering that all these are money of the people, I think central bank has an active role in being able to look into all this, particularly the examples already made that even transactions with no collaterals based on JSS only, and there is an action removing the very assurance that those loans can be collected. The central bank, as a regulatory agency, has the responsibility to look into this and probably even monitor before it happens. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Marcoleta. You may continue, Honorable Defensor.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, before I ask this question, ito po yung special purpose vehicle law.
I'd like to make a suggestion to your humble representation.
Yes,
Maybe we could invite the chairman then, Vitaliano Naniagas, to shed light on these transactions. What do you think?
I have no problem with that, Mr. Chair. But I think, para sa akin no, malinaw eh. Ito yung nangyari, klaro sa akin yung mga
Hindi, yung
actions
frame of
taken.
mind nila, bakit sila nagbigay ng mga ganyang concessions, napakalaki. 'Di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. May Comsec please invite former Chairman DBP Vitaliano Naniagas to the next hearing.
Mr. Chair, not only that, because when the minutes of the meeting of the board was presented by Congressman Defensor, it only not involve Laniagas, but other members of the board. And so we have to subpoena them all. Invite them all in the next hearing to shed light on those matters.
Maybe since we are in COVID situation, maybe we get first his reply. If you're not satisfied, then we invite the rest.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. As recommended by the Honorable Garbin.
Including that of the President and CEO, if he's still alive.
He's not alive though.
CEO Rinaldo G. David, he's still alive?
He recently died.
He recently died.
Excellent. This happened in 2004, Mike, right? And
Yes.
they are all appointed.
Yes.
Yes.
Who appointed them?
At that time, it was during the time of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Mr. Chair.
2004.
2004. The loans were provided during the time of President
Ramos.
and President Estrada.
Estrada.
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, make it of record that the invitation should be sent to all the members of the board who are still alive right now. Those that I have mentioned by Congressman Defensor.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Okay.
Please
Mr. Chair,
invite all of the directors listed in the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask again Ms. Cube of the Bangko Sentral, and of course the legal is also here. Kasi pumasok na po ako sa SPAV law, and I will have a discussion on this. Kasi po yung certificate of eligibility, if we can go to the next slide, para lang humapaliwanag. Next slide, please. So ito yung batas. Ang nakalagay po dyan, Section 12, letter B. The transfer of non-performing assets from a financial institution, yung FI po, to a special purpose vehicle shall be subject to prior certification of eligibility. Nakalagay na po dyan. So, shall be subject to prior certification. Wala hong qualification. Kung sinasabing meron kang incentive, kung may hiningin ka, sinasabi niya, it shall be subject to prior certification. So I'd like to ask again, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Ms. Cube, you mentioned before and you were affirming na, you said in your understanding, no, just to be clear about it, kailangan talaga magkaroon ng certificate of eligibility. So may I know from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas kung ito po talaga ang dapat na proseso?
Sir, Mr. Chair, as far as banks applying for tax incentives under the SPV Act of 2002, yes, they have to apply with the supervising or the regulator in order to have those NPAs eligible and such that the BSP will be able to issue the COE. Mr. Chair, with your indulgence po, Congressman Mike, in the FIST law, which I said mirrors some of the provisions of the SPV Act, in the FIST law, also Section 12, this was further reiterated, this particular Section 12 of SPV. However, there are certain enhancements, and if I may read, the
Ms. Cube, I'm sorry. Yun lang pong dito lang po sa SPV law, kasi ito yung particular concern po natin.
Yes, sir.
So, ang sinasabi niyo po, bago pumunta yan sa special purpose vehicle, kailangan magkaroon ng approval ng eligibility from the Bank Sentral ng Pilipinas.
As far as the NPAs being enrolled po.
Okay,
in the
so very clear. So ang sinasabi po ng Bangko Sentral, as the authority, sila po talaga nag-approve at yan po yung batas, kailangan dumaan sa amin. Babalik po ako sa DBP. Doon po sa 4 na ipinasok nyo special purpose vehicle, tama po ba na ang Maynilad at ang Benpres, kung di ako nagkakamali, walang eligibility?
You're correct, Mr. Chair.
So tama po. Pero ibinilagay nyo pa rin po sa special purpose vehicle.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So thank you for that. At least klaro na po, Mr. Chair, yung nangyari. Kasi pupunta na ako sa next presentation, please. Ito po yung submission nyo sa amin. Next slide, please. Yung next slide na muna yan.
Honorable Mike,
Yes.
i-clear ko lang kung tao mo itong dalawang nakatayo kasi baka mamaya mabaril na ako eh.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
So, ito po yung sinabit sa atin. Yan po yung inyong kontrata with Lehman Brothers. Next slide. Nakalagay po dyan, certification of eligibility. Mismong sa inyo pong agreement, nire-require kayo ng Lehman. Talagang kailangan may certification of eligibility. So it's coming from DBP, it's coming from Lehman, and I'm very happy that it's clear now with the Bangko Sentral. Dahil noon naman, Ms. Cube, in fairness to yung sinabi mo na oo. But ngayon, very firm na in-establish natin na talagang kailangan, and DBP is now agreeing to that. Yan po talaga yung kontrata nila. Ngayon, Mr. Chair, ang sinabi po, next slide. Sabi po ni President Herbosa, I just quoted portion of his letter. In the case of non-performing loans and non-performing assets ng Lopez entities, DBP did not condone or write off its NPLs. So yan po yung sinabi niya. Okay, sinasabi niya walang write-off, walang condonation. Again, I'll ask Attorney Adjong. So wala pong write-off, walang condonation.
There was none, sir.
Okay. Yung pong 6 billion, di ba hot, 7 na billion kayo? So, nasa libro nyo, 7 na billion, binenta nyo, bumalik sa inyo 3-point-something billion. Yung 6 na billion pong natira, ano pong treatment nyo doon? Di ba tinanggal nyo yun, inalis?
Honorable
Yes, please.
Defensor, for accounting treatment, those 60% were booked against reserves. I mean, so the OPB, the 9.6, those are covered with reserves. So the OPB or the value less the payment is a deficit, right? And these are covered with allowance for probable losses. So net effect is 0 in the books.
Tama ho, pero losses.
That's covered by allowance for probable losses.
So, sa madaling salita, pinapayagan kayong magkaroon ng pagkalugi na 6 billion. So it was never condoned, hindi siya write-off pero losses.
Hello, some admin matters only.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry. I was informed by the COMSEC that because we have a slide that is shared in the Zoom, our stenographers cannot ascertain who is the person talking. So when you respond, please identify yourself, the resource persons, and please address the chair, not the member, when you answer. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chair, just to be clear again, no, inaano ko lang po, pinapayagan ng DBP na sa kanyang transaksyon, sa kanyang negosyo, kung minsan nalulugi siya. So ito yung covered by losses. Allowance pala, allowance for losses.
Probable losses.
So
Please inform your name before.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I am Romeo Aguilar of DBP.
Yes. So Mr. Chair, sa madaling salita, lugi, losses, lugi. Nagkaroon ng pagkalugi. Na pinapayagan naman ng batas.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next slide, please. Ang sabi ng COA, sabi niya, completed the sealed bid auction of non-performing accounts consisting of SPV eligible. So under the Special Purpose Vehicle Act of 2002, the gross value of the assets sold had a total outstanding principal of 9.34 billion. Medyo mali pa nga ho to, no? And then 5.7 billion daw yung up, 3.02 ang pagkakabenta. The transaction, ito pala, loss on sale of NPAs was charged against the related specific provisions to current operations under miscellaneous income. Yan po yung binabanggit nyo, Mr. Aguilar. Tama po ba? Okay. So parang sinasabi kasi lumalabas eh. Hindi, sabi ng COA, hindi naman kami nalugi. Hindi naman to kinondone eh. Hindi naman to write-off. Alam nyo, para sa aming mga hindi taga-bangko, kasi ang condonation, in fact, is not a bank term. Hindi po yung ginagamit na salita sa bangko. Tama po ba, Mr. Aguilar? Mr. Chairman?
It is used, sir.
It is used.
Yes.
So, okay. So condonation ang ibig sabihin pinatawad ka. Okay, write-off ibig sabihin tinanggal, binura. Tama?
Strictly speaking, for accounting purposes, it's not a write-off or condonation. It's charged against the APL.
Yung write-off.
It's not a write-off, sir.
No. Ang sinasabi ko yung mga definition. Para lang humaklaro. Pag condonation nga, pinatawad ka. Pag write-off, binura. Parang ganun po yung ibig sabihin. Ibang-iba to. Two different words. Anyway, Mr. Chair, let's not debate about the etymology of the words. Pero dito, sinasabi ng COA,
No, Mr.
based
Chair,
on the SPV Act, na iyan po ay na-charge ninyo sa inyong provision to current operations na binanggit nyo naman kanina. Tama po ba? Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think etymology is very important, lalo na sa mga non-accountants na katulad namin. Kasi sa DBP po, Mr. Chair, pinipilit nila na hindi ni write-off talaga o kaya hindi kinondon. Yun po ang minimaintain ninyo, di ba? Ang sinasabi nyo, dinirecognize nyo lang. Yun ang term nyo eh. Dinirecognize nyo sapagkat ang ginagamit yung dahilan, duman lahat sa proseso sa ilalim ng SPB law. Ibig sabihin, mayroong COE. Ito nga yung Certificate of Eligibility na galing sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. At saka mayroong clean opinion ng COA. Pero,
Mr. Chair, kaklaro ko lang, walang Certificate of Eligibility yung dalawa. Pero nilagay pa rin sa special purpose vehicle.
Pero ginagamit nga nila eh. Yung term, ang ginamit yung term, de-recognize. Para sa amin, it is a sugar-coated term. Sapagkat, technically speaking, kung ang pag-uusapan ay yung umutang, talagang write-off yun doon sa kanyang doon sa kanyang books of accounts. Depende kung sino yung tumitingin eh. Kung ako yung nangutang, okay, ni-write off ko yun doon sa aking book of accounts. Tama?
No.
Para sa inyo, walang write-off, walang condonation. Kaya nga, miski na tanong natin, Mr. Chair, sa BSP, dito sa kanilang position paper, ang sabi nila, based on available records in BSP, there is no information on loan condonation or write-offs by DBP of the accounting belonging to Benpress Holdings Corporation. Wala talaga tayong makikita. Dahil ang ginagamit po ninyo is a sugar-coated term, de-recognized.
No, sir. Actually, so from DBP's books, these assets were sold to an SPV. So the loan still exists. But the borrower now is the lender now is the
Lehman
SPV.
Brothers.
Lehman Brothers.
No, Mr. Aguilar.
Mr. Chair,
That is from the SPV.
Hello, excuse me. We cannot have three people talking at the same time.
Yes.
It's still that I'd like to inform the sponsor that he has gone over the time. But since you are the sponsor, we will give you double time. So,
Sure. Yeah.
40 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tatapusin ko lang po to then na maybe this Marcoleta.
Yes.
Gusto ko lang klaro, Mr. Aguilar, no? Parang yung meron kang tindahan, di ba? May mga binibenta kang damit. Ngayon yung damit mo, hindi na siya nabibenta. Okay? Binili mo siya ng 100 piso. Ngayon, itong damit, para kumita ka, binenta mo sa labas ng 30 pesos. Which is what happened. Ito yung nangyari mismo. Yung pagkalugi mo na 70 pesos, inilagay mo lang doon sa operational cost mo. Sabi mo, hindi, parte naman yan ng operational cost ko. Pero nalugi ka pa rin. Tama?
That's correct, sir.
O yun, ganun lang naman. Ngayon, pasensya na po kayo, Mr. Aguilar, Mr. Chair. Kami po, ang taong bayan, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta, simple lang ang pag-intindi namin eh. Yung 9 na bilyon, binenta yung 3 bilyon, nagkaroon ng lugi ng 6 na bilyon. Whether it was condonation, write-off, ang gusto namin sabihin, lugi. So next slide please. Ito ngayon yung si Pangulo.
I will go after itong mga elite. And I will not name the person, but yung mga company nila noon, Benpress and about 6 other companies. May utang sila sa DBP. At ang utang nila umabot ng to finance this pera ng tao, gagamitin nila to finance their business. Pero kanila yung kita. And yet they were not able to pay. And it was condoned by government.
Yan, Mr. Chairman, ang pagkakaintindi ng inyong abang lingkod at marami sa atin dito, kasi nga naman, yung 1.5 billion pesos na ibinenta sa isang special purpose vehicle ay naging 500 pesos na lang, more or less. Is that correct, Mr. Aguilar?
40% of the 1.5.
40% of the 1.5. So magkano po yun?
600.
Okay. So 600 million na lang po ang pagkakabenta. Ngayon, kahit ilagay mo muna ng 6%, ang interest nila, 3 years, ang laki pa rin dun sa original na utang nila. I do not know if Philippine Investment 1 and 2 are here, Mr. Chair.
That is the problem, Honorable Defensor. We do not have ways and means to liquidate them. We need the help of DBP.
Okay. So, but
They have provided the contact details, but we will invite them in the next hearing.
yes, Mr. Chair. Pero isipin niyo po, Mr. Chair, no? Umutang ako 1.5 billion. Pagkatapos lumipat dito yung utang ko, naging 600 million na lang. So, syempre, yung special purpose vehicle, gusto rin niya kumita. Kahit nasabihin mong 10% o 20%, that is only 660 million. O 720 million ang kanyang babayaran. Ang tanong ngayon, magkano niya naibenta? Kung yung mga utang na yun, let's say in the case of Maynila, yung 1 billion, naibenta niya ng 3 billion, nalugi DBP, kumita pa yung nangutang. So ito lang po yung binabanggit ko, Mr. Chair. Anyway, yung akin naman hypothetical, dahil wala naman po dito yung Philippine Investment 1 and 2, to clarify that. But next slide, please. Yan po ang nakalagay sa batas. Any loss that is incurred by the financial institutions as a result of the transfer of the non-performing asset shall be treated as ordinary loss. Kaya po itong BSP, COA, DBP, sinasabi nila, walang condemnation, walang write-off, because this is precisely the point of the Special Purpose Vehicle Act of 2002, that it will be treated as an ordinary loss. Pero again, merong violation. Number 1, yung loan na walang collateral. Number 2, yung certificate of eligibility na hindi ibinigay para yan ipasok sa SPAV. You know, Mr. Chair, during my research, and I called up the respective CEOs of Pag-ibig, of which ako po yung sekretaryo dati, Mr. Ahmad Moti. I called Mr. Felix Butos of the National Mortgage and Finance Corporation. Simple lang ho ang tanong ko. Sabi ko nung panahon namin sa housing, hindi pwedeng magbenta ng loans under book value. Tinanong ko sila, nagagawa nyo ba yan ngayon? Ang sagot po ng dalawa, hindi. We cannot do that. Kung minsan nagkakaroon ng balanse ng mas mataas sa book value at mas mababa ng kaunti, but in the end, the total book value ay tinatamaan. So in this case, there was graft and corruption committed, Mr. Chairman. Next slide, please. So again, ang definition ng loss, lugi in Filipino. Yung 9.556 billion na utang, binayaran na lamang ng 3.83 billion piso. Tama po ba to, Mr. Aguilar?
That's the sale transaction, sir.
Thank you. At, next slide please. Ang pagkalugi ng DBP at ng sambayan ng Pilipino, 5.726 billion piso. Itong pondo pong to, noong pahutong 2004, hindi ko ho alam, based on current value, kung magkano to. But 5.7 billion, kailangan to para pantulong sa taong bayan. Ngayon, na may pinag-uusapan tayong ayuda under Bayanihan Part 2. Kailangan to para sa pagbakuna ng tao Dahil ang pondo pong yan, uutangin natin. Kailangan to para palakasin ang ating ekonomiya. Yan ang nawala sa DBP. Under questionable circumstances, mga pangyayaring hindi dapat, nagkaroon po ng ganitong problema ang DBP. And I hope, Mr. Chair, at a proper time, we can do the remedial legislation required. Thank you so much sa ating mga kasama. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Honorable Defensor. Now, there is a round 2 and the Honorable Garbin wishes to ano. Sorry, before we go to the round 2, the resource person from Zoom, the Honorable Herbosa, the President, Mr. Herbosa, is going to give a manifestation comment. Mr. Herbosa, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you po. Thank you so much for this chance to really be in this hearing because I'm really learning a lot. I would just like to further to the points raised by our Honorable Congressman Mike Defensor. Just a little bit of arithmetic lang po, no? That's which is actually already in the accounting entries. You know, whenever a loan becomes sour, and in the formula that which BSP also regulates us with, we have to classify this as non-performing po. Marami hong degrees yan, yung talagang hindi na makakabayad, yung meron pang nasa ICU na pwede pang revive, etc. There's a whole formula po there, and BSP regulates all banks strictly on that one. When we set aside these doubtful accounts, we charge our income. We set aside. Let's say if our income is 3 billion and we think that we have to provide for about so much of doubtful accounts, we have to take out, let's say, 1 billion from our 4 billion net income. Ito pong 1 billion ang tinatawag nating reserves. That's in the books. In case any of these loans that we doubt will pay us turn sour. So, in other words, gaya nga ho itong Lopez loans, yung nangyari ho noong 2006, di natabi ho nila yan. Now, in banking practice, that means total loss po yan. Zero. Zero po yun. Now, because of the financial crisis of 2006, which is probably like what we're facing right now in this pandemic, this is a systemic development. Every one of us, as you know, are affected. So I think in 2006, the Asian financial crisis weakened a lot of the banks. So in their wisdom, the BSP promulgated the SPV, which became law. So as to, shall we say, unburden the banks, no? Kasi even very good borrowers were facing liquidity problems as we are experiencing now. So I think we have to put it in this context on 2006. So then going back to the math, if you will forgive me, ang nangyari po dyan, di zero po yun. Now, the SPV allowed the banks to recover from that zero. So this SPV enabled the banks to sell that to the Lehman Brothers and other investment bankers who were willing to buy the garbage.
Okay,
a whole package of garbage. So tapos ngayon po, so ang nangyari po, we were able to recover when we sold to an real sale, no? Na we mentioned earlier, 64%. So we were able to save 64% po instead of zero loss. Ngayon, yung ewan ko kung nangyari ho naman doon sa Lehman, kung nabenta naman nila, kung magkano nila nabenta at 64. I'm not so sure if they're able to sell it 100. Baka naman at 85% or something. Thank you very much.
Inviting the PI1 and PI2, and if they do not appear in the next hearing, may I direct the COMSEC to ask assistance from the police or the NBI how to locate the former managers, because this is a long time ago, or former top management of PI1, PI2. So if nobody shows up in order to address the questions as propounded by the President Herbosa and the Honorable Defensor, we need them here. So before we go to the second round, I was remiss in my list. There is a last one who will ask on the first round, the Honorable Joe Jimenez. Honorable Joe Jimenez of First District, Zamboanga City.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Klaro po ba?
Claro, please proceed.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. To my dear colleagues, good morning po. To my co-public servants, good morning din po. I remember I asked this question during the last hearing we had in January 18 of this year. And I was promised that in today's hearing, meron na po tayong lawyers who will be attending from the Central Bank. Para sa
Yes, he's here. It's Attorney Teofilo Lagadio.
Yes po. So same question I'd like to begin with. Obvious naman po sa presentation, especially of Kong Mike Defensor and from the comments of our veteran legislators in DS Marcoleta, very obvious naman po na hindi po nasunod ang Special Purpose Vehicle Law of 2002. As stated, kahit po yung Certificate of Eligibility, hindi naman po na-issue sa lahat ng kontratang ito, ng mga transactions na ito, I mean. So my first question to the Bangko Sentral, what were the laws applied if ever hindi po na-apply yung SPB law at the time the transaction was held? Meaning, ano ho yung mga batas na i-apply natin at that time para po i-allow ang transaction na ito? That's my first question po.
Mr. Chair, the idea of SPAB is to provide liquidity, to attract liquidity, so that the bank will make use of the benefits of the privileges that are granted by the SPAB. But then there is just one route. Okay. Now, if the bank would not make use of the perks or the incentives provided by the SPAB, they can take another route. That is, make use of another provision of the law, like the Civil Code, other statute, not necessarily the SPAB law. They are not limited by the choices, Mr. Chair. The SPAB law, however, would provide incentives and perks. That's why they would make use of that route, but that is not the exclusive route that they can take, Mr. Chair.
So if I may be direct, Mr. Chairman, considering there were two transactions na hindi po na-issuehan ng COE, so sinabi po ng lawyer, there are other statutes, may we be guided kung ano po yung sinasabi nilang statutes? I'm asking this question, number one, napakinggan natin yung sinabi din ni Presidente Duterte. The last time this issue was mentioned by President Duterte that he will refer the matter to the ombudsman. So this early po, as a lawmaker, tayo po sa Committee on Good Government, we'd like to know for the record kung hindi po in-apply yung SPB law, then what were the particular statutes applied for these transactions, especially doon sa transaction na hindi po sila kumuha ng certificate of eligibility. Again, madalas natin naririnig ang sinasabi na this is an internal policy, practice ito ng mga bangko. Well, possible ho yun sa mga private banks. But when we talk about DBP, and later on, we will also be talking about the Land Bank of the Philippines. These are obviously state-owned banks. Higher po ang standard na nire-require natin sa mga nagmamaneho ng DBP and later ng Land Bank po. Para itong mga transaksyon na ito, sigurado tayo hindi ho malulugi ang taong bayan. Tama po yung sinasabi ng mga kasama natin. Ngayon naghahanap tayo ng pera, pero 15, 20 years ago, may mga transactions po pala na naging involved ang ating mga state-owned banks na halatang tinatanong ng taong bayan ngayon, anong nangyari? ba't nagkaganon, ba't luging-lugi tayo sa mga transaksyon na that our state-owned banks entered into. Thank you po.
Okay. In broad stroke, Mr. Chair, if you are not going to make use of this PAV law, the other statutes that they can make use would be the provisions of the Civil Code referring to the assignment of credits and the provisions of the Corporation Code, Mr. Chair, regarding the sale of assets. So those are the two statutes, those are the two relevant statutes that they can make use of outside this PAV law, Mr. Chair.
Well, for the record, I would like to manifest, Mr. Chairman, if yun po ang sinasabi ng lawyer po natin from the Bangko Sentral, if I'm not mistaken. Again, citing the provisions of the Civil Code on assignment of credits and perhaps the Corporation Code, again, pwede natin sabihin kung this is a private-to-private transaction, meaning private banks with a private individual, perhaps that would be acceptable. Pero kung ang pag-uusapan dito is a state-owned bank with a transaction with a private individual or private corporation, if you ask me, Mr. Chairman, that would be a kulang po. Kulang para sa akin yung ganong rason. Again, who knows where this investigation will lead. Malinaw po sa atin na marami pang possible transaction ang madidiscover natin later on. So I hope let's be more particular sa mga cited provisions natin. We're looking for the minutes of the meetings kung saan diniscuss ito ng board ng DBP, kung ano yung naging base nila for granting the transaction. At the end of the day, this is close to 6 billion pesos. Itong transaction pa lang. Who knows magkano naman involved sa mga ibang transaction pa na later on madidiscover natin. So sa ngayon po, I hope mas magiging malinaw sa atin, in particular to this representation, being a neophyte member of the House, kung ano po yung mga particular na batas na in-apply natin. Bakit kung pinasa ng Kongreso natin noong December 23, 2002 ang SPAB law, bakit some transactions between DBP and other corporations, they opted not to apply the SPAB law. So yun lang po in the meantime, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Jimenez. Before we proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of members, Representative Tony Petalbano, Representative Samantha Vargas Alfonso, Deputy Speaker D.V. Sevillano, Member Ria Vergara, Representative Mark Inverga, Representative Sharon Garin, and D.S. Henry Ominal. So lunch, this is a working lunch so that we will be finished by 2 o'clock. So feel free to consume your lunch. Now we have the next round of questioning since the first round has already finished. Next to avail of the second round is the Honorable Pido Garbin of Ako Bicol Party List.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kanina po ay nakita natin yung buong picture as presented to us by Congressman Defensor, the sponsor of this resolution, na kung saan ay sa kabuuan ay 9.6 billion ito. At napatunayan nito as affirmed by the DBP, Attorney Adjong, that when it was disposed of under the SPB law ay talagang wala naman certificate of eligibility. Ang tanong ko, doon sa kabuuan na 9.6 billion, kasi 1.6 billion yung pinag-uusapan lang natin dito, kung masasagot nyo, yung iba ho bang non-performing assets that was disposed of under the SPB law doon sa 9.6 are similarly situated or same as that of the 1.6 billion na wala rin certificate of eligibility?
Yes, sir. We have, kasi sir, the entire portfolio is divided into 9 asset pools. Meron pong dalawang, pinagsama-sama po yung similarly situated accounts. Yung tinatawag pong asset pool 1, which are all non-SPV eligible. So that's a
So hindi lang ho yung 1.6 billion, kundi
Yes, sir.
yung kabuuan na 9.6 billion, wala hong COE. Tama ho ba?
not all accounts.
Not all accounts.
Not all accounts are covered.
In the totality of 5.6 billion, sino or ilan ho? Magkano ho yung walang COE?
Sir, Chairman, this is just a rough estimate. Of the 9.6, 2.5 are not SPAG eligible, so they have no COE. That's the point of getting a COE. I mean, if it has to comply with the SPB law. So may mga cut-off date po kasi the SPB law. Kaya yung mga ibang accounts that are past already the cut-off of June 2002 are not eligible under the SPAB law. So they will not be given, or we don't have really to apply for COE.
So meaning exempted ho sila?
Yes. Hindi po siya covered.
So
No,
you're
the
saying
SPB
this
law.
1.6 billion and the other...
No, sir. Just speaking of the 2.5 of the 9.6
Yes.
are not eligible under the SPB law.
That includes the 1.6 billion of the Lopez loan.
Just Maynilad and Benpres.
Maynilad and Benpres.
Yes, that's why they have no COE. They are not eligible, sir, under the SPAB law. So we don't really have to apply for COE with BSP.
Sinasabi nyo hindi kailangan.
Oh, ay, kahit po mag-apply kami, i-reject lang naman po ng BSP yun. Kasi you're
Pero
not-
sinama pa rin.
Opo.
Sinama pa rin.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Kasi po yung yung SPAB law essentially is for tax incentive, right? It was sponsored by BSP so that the banks can relent. That time, the banks are loaded with non-performing assets, which cause also some sort of distortion in their balance sheet because it's not earning. Yet they're paying cost of money. For the NPLs, for the ROPAs, they're paying for caretakers. They're paying for taxes. Yet it's not earning. So we have to clean our books, essentially, and from the proceeds of those sale to the SPB companies, turn around this money, relend it, and earn. So after the SPB law, if you look at DBP's balance sheet now, it's much stronger.
tama ho. Pero hindi ho natin ikakaila na may pagkakalugi ho talaga ng...
As my understanding from the SPB law is, it's expected, sir.
So, sabi
It's
nyo ho,
expected.
from zero, nagkaroon kayo ng
Recovery.
liquidity.
Yes.
Dati kasi, non-performing assets nga to, zero nga ito.
Opo.
So out of the 9.6 billion, you were able to make 3 billion. Tama
Yes.
ho. Oh, pero
And relend it.
pero sabi
reinvest
ho
it.
nga ni Kong Mike, talagang hindi mo naman ikakaila na nalugi ng 6 billion. Tama po ba?
Yes, sir. As I said, under the SPB law, losses to the banks by sale transferred to SPBs, there will be loss expected po.
Mr. Chair, quick interjection. Kasi ang binanggit po 2.5 billion without certificate of eligibility. Pero nilagay nyo pa rin sa special purpose vehicle.
Yes.
You don't consider that illegal?
As BSP confirmed earlier, there are other laws that can apply to sale.
Yes.
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 That's what DBP availed of when we sold the 2.5.
No. DBP was saying may ways kayo to sell. Pero pag
BSP.
Yeah, BSP, I'm sorry. BSP was saying. Pero pag nilagay niya special purpose vehicle, magkano ang book value nitong 2.5 billion?
That's the book value, sir.
How much did you sell this?
I don't have the...
Approximately 1 billion. 2.5 po ang utang, more or less. 2.1 billion nyo lang binenta. Tama po? More or less. Hindi naman natin kailangan pagdebatihan yan. Ngayon, kailangan ho ito nasa book value ninyo. If it is below book value, without going to special purpose vehicle, illegal po yan. Were you involved, Mr. Aguilar, during that time, itong bentahan na to?
I was part of the technical working group.
I'm telling you, Mr. Aguilar, once the committee makes the report, you will be one of those liable. Kasi ho, ang SPV law, meron kang assets, ilalagay mo mura at a discount. Pero, ngayon walang SPV law. No? Well, may fees ngayon, may SPV law na. Pero prior to SPV law, hindi ka pwede magbenta ng below book value. Graft and corruption yun. Kasi may floor price ka. Kaya nga, inulit ko, Mr. Chairman, tinawagan ko ang Pag-ibig President, tinawagan ko ang NHMFC President, and they confirmed to me na kahit sa ngayon, hindi nila ginagawa selling below book value.
If I may, Chairman.
Please proceed. Please give a reply.
Okay. For Maynilad, the OPB is 710 and is covered by allowance for probable losses of 185. So the net carrying book value is 524. The SPAB paid 618. So there's an excess reserve of 94. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Honorable
Yeah.
Defensor, the Honorable Garbin
ay, sorry.
told me
Sorry.
if we
Yes,
can,
please
can
proceed.
take the floor again, maybe we can wait on
I'm
your...
sorry. I'm sorry,
Thank you.
Honorable
So,
Garbin.
Mr. Aguilar, at least sinabi mo na part ka ng TWG. Kasi ngayon ko lang nalaman, akala ko yung lahat ng involved dito ay wala na, nag-retire na. So, dito sa kabuuan, 9.6 billion, nakita natin yung financial transaction na kung saan yung mga may nagkakautang sa inyo, these are passive parties. Kasi dito sa chart, ito kinuha ko yung chart na prinisinta ni spokesperson Harry Roque, na kung saan yung transaction involving DBP, the Lopez companies, and the bad loans and the Lehman SPB. Ito yung chart niya, DBP, Lopez Company, and then the Lehman, SPB. So sa madaling sabi, yung DBP nabenta sa Lehman. Tama ho?
the loans of
The loans,
Yes.
the bad loans. Okay.
and they became the new lender.
They became the new lender.
Yes.
Okay. Sa pagkakaalam nyo ho, nabenta to ng palugi, magkano ho yung naibalik o when it was redeemed by the debtors to the Lehman Brothers? Not only that of the 1.6 billion loans of the Lopez's, but yung karamihan, were they able to redeem those assets sold to Lehman Brothers?
We don't have any connection with respect to the transactions.
Wala na kayo doon
Wala
sa
na po.
transaction. So ang transaction nyo is from DBP to Lehman Brothers.
Tama
Ba't
po.
naman Lehman Brothers? Ba't naman pumasok yung Lehman Brothers? Of all the sabihin na, anong tawag nyo? Anong partisipasyon ng Lehman Brothers? Anong tawag? Anong official term doon?
Buyer.
Buyer. Okay.
Yes.
Ba't naman of all the buyers, Lehman Brothers yung napili nyo?
The bank conducted a bidding of this 9.6 billion.
Sila lang yung pumasok? Sila lang yung...
There are like 4 or 5 investors that participated.
Can you name those 4
there's-
investors?
There's Deutsche Bank, Standard Bank, Asia Development Fund. No, ADM is the acronym. I'm not. I can't. ADAMA. ADM
So,
and AMROC.
so Lehman Brothers, Deutsche Bank, ADA,
AMROC.
Amrock, they all participated in a bidding as a buyer or investor for that for the sale of the non-performing assets. Doon ho sa bidding na yon, can you please enlighten us? Paano kinukondukta yon?
Okay. So when we started, when the sale started or the cleaning of the books of DBP started, we engaged a financial advisor because sale to UNSPAB or these investment houses or funds is very new in the Philippines, so we don't know how to do this. And so the first step was to conduct our bidding for financial advisory services. And the bidding was won by Ernst & Young, TASI. And Ernst & Young, TASI is counseled by ACRA. So this TASI were the one who packaged the sale essentially and help us market. That's why we were able to get investors to bid.
So the winning,
okay. So the bank gave TASI all the records of the NPAs to be sold. And the advisor studied this, how much can we recover based on expected cash flows, and they do the valuation, how much can be expected, how much will this portfolio sold. And then we go to the bidding. So we were guided essentially by Ernst & Young and ACRA throughout the process.
so Ernst & Young as the financial advisor
Yes, sir.
who leads you to the bidding process of the
And the valuation.
non-performed.
And the valuation. So they did the valuation.
Sa madaling sabi, ang nanalo sa bidding yung Lehman Brothers.
Tama po.
May pagkakataon ba ho na yung Lehman Brothers is the winning bidder and now the new lender could again sell it to another investor?
That's possible.
So sa pagkakataon dito sa 9.6 billion, may papagkaalam ba kayong binenta ulit ito ng Lehman Brothers? Kasi
we're
tinitingnan
not privy
natin
to the
dito,
transactions of the SPV, sir. I'm sorry.
wala kayong personal knowledge.
Wala po.
So kayo may pagkakalugi ng 6 billion, pero would it suffice to say that the Lehman Brothers, sila yung kumita dito?
No idea, sir. No idea. Of course, a business exists for profit, right? Sorry. That's the essential purpose of a business. It lives for business or for profit, for creating value for its shareholders. So they may also lose if they're not able to sell these assets bought from DVP at least equal to the price they got it from us. So it's but there may be profit, there may be loss. So really speculative on us to say whether they profit or not on the transaction.
Mr. Chair, I will reserve some of my questions in the next round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Garbin. Before we proceed to the second round, from the first round, the Honorable Ted Aresco wishes to interpolate. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you po sa inquiry ng committee, and thank you for the authors, Congressman Mike Defensor and Dan Marcoleta, and greetings po sa Office of the Speaker, Attorney Hani Sipin, for allowing this DBP investigation into the Lopez buyout. I would like to ask Mr. Chair, with the SPAB sold to Lehman Brothers, what happened now? Because Lehman collapsed or went out of business last 2008. So who pays what to whom now? Where does Ben Press and the Lopez Business Corporation pay to, since Lehman already imploded, Mr. Chair?
Anybody can answer? Do you have? Are you aware what happened after Lehman got the loans? Nobody can answer here? Wala daw po, ano.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Given the bias and prejudice of the Development Bank of the Philippines over the decades, Mr. Chair, to the favored elite, Mr. Chair, can we request, Mr. Chair, that the committee get an inventory of all such similar loans extended by DBP to other corporations, particularly the 100 corporations, Mr. Chair?
Actually, the Honorable Haresco, when you were out, there was already a motion by Honorable Garbin and Honorable Defensor to issue a subpoena for the list of those comprising the 9.6 billion SPAV availment and the present as of 2021 the non-performing loans of 7.5 billion. So that has already been action. There was already action taken, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In aid of legislation, Mr. Chair, apparently over the past decades, Mr. Chair, favored corporations or large corporations are given more attention by the Development Bank of the Philippines, Mr. Chair. Sana po hindi na Development Bank kundi Develop Bank of the Philippines, because, Mr. Chair, I remember in 2004, the owners of BDO were the first ones to borrow some $300 million from DBP, crowding out the agricultural and aquaculture sectors, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, I like to give notice in aid of legislation that perhaps the mandate of DBP be revisited. Because, for example, in my case, Mr. Chair, 30 years ago, I had to have my own buyout by a private sector bank from DBP. And that was 100%. Dito sa mga elite corporation, they can discount their debt and be paid off and given attention with tender loving care, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Aresco. We will have the take note of your recommendations for our committee report. And next to avail of the second round is the Honorable D.S. Marcoleta. You are recognized, sir.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Hindi po ba sa tinatawag nating generally accepted accounting principles, ito yung GAAP, bago matrato na NPL or non-performing loans, ito po ay tinatawag nating doubtful accounts. Tama po ba yun?
Sir, yung doubtful account is an account classification under the Manual of Regulations for Banks kasama po yung NPL doon. Pero yung technical definition po ng NPL, noong 2004 when the assets were sold to the SPV, ang non-performing loan po ay, as a general rule, yun yung mga utang na hindi nakabayad within 30 days from the date they became past due.
Ang ibig mo sabihin, ang sagot mo sa tanong ko ay oo.
Yes, oo. Pero yung substandard is just one account
Oo nga,
classification.
ang pinaka-importante lang, bago talaga matrato na NPL, doubtful accounts muna sapagkat kailangang mapatunayan na sinisingil nyo ito eh. At kapag hindi na ninyo masingil, pwedeng ikonsidera ng BIR na uncollectible account na ito.
Okay.
Para lang maintindihan ng mga taong nakikinig sa atin sapagkat komplikado kasi itong mga ginagamit nating termino. Pero dapat nating patunayan pa rin na yung debtor o yung creditor, limbawa, DBP, dito sa ating pag-uusap, ay talagang ginawa lahat ang magagawa para singilin yung utang. Halimbawa, gamitin nating magandang halimbawa 1.6 billion, di ba? Sa kabila ng lahat ng ating ginagawa na paniningil sapagkat yun naman obligasyon natin, ay wala talaga silang maibayad. Dapat ma-establish natin yun, tama po.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you're
Okay.
right.
Kasi, ang pagkakaalam ko, yung ganong klaseng diligence na nire-require sa atin ng batas, ay talagang nire-require din ng tax code and other revenue regulations. Tama?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Ang totoo niyan, pwede nga nating habulin yung kanilang mga collaterals. Ang itatanong ko nga sa inyo, sinubukan ba ninyo na habulin ang mga collaterals? Hindi, bago yun muna pala, meron ba kayong may papakitang mga dokumento na talagang hindi nyo hinayaan lang na mabinbin yung ganong klaseng laki ng pagkakautang, talagang ginugol nyo lahat ang paraan, ginamit lahat ang paraan para masingil? Meron po ba tayong mga records na pagbabasihan na ganon?
Just to, I think Attorney Adjong during the last meeting
Hindi pwede
said-
naman pong
said-
sagutin ng oo o hindi yun eh.
yung pong kasi
Meron
nga,
po.
yung nga pong mga records
Hindi,
ng
meron po, wala.
wala po sa amin yung mga
Oh,
records na kasi transfer na po sa SPB.
Hindi,
as required.
bago pa po matransfer ang aking tinatanong sa inyo. Kasi kailangan maipakita natin na talagang yung diligence na yon, hindi lamang good father of a family, kung tutuusin, kasi ordinary diligence yun eh. Kasi bilang tagapangalaga ng pera ng mamamayan, TBP po ito, kailangan maipakita natin talagang ay maniningil po tayo. Yun na po yung aming gusto lang makita mula sa inyo kung talagang ginanap ninyo yung tungkulin na yon. Meron po ba tayong dokumento, attorney? Siguro baka ikaw ang papile ng mga demand letters, kabi-kabila siguro. I would understand. At talagang ako'y naniniwala sa iyo na katakot-takot isang kariton na demand letter siguro. At napakaraming paraan ang ginawa mo para lang kolektahin ito. Meron ba?
Sir, I was not I was not the handling lawyers of any of these cases, but just the same, for the record, Mr. Chair, may dalawa pong rehab cases. There were 2 petitions for rehabilitation relative to the accounts.
Hindi, ba naman yung rehabilitation dun sa... Nandito muna tayo dun sa sinasabi kong diligence ninyo. Lahat ng paraan. Halimbawa, pinorclose nyo ba yung mga properties halimbawa? Sapagkat kinakailangan po natin gawin yun. Pinoproteksyonan natin ang salapi ng bayan. Kung wala po, okay lang. At para makapagtanong na po ako sa ibang mga puntos.
There should have been files or letters of collection NPLs that are in the 9.6 billion.
There should have been. Yun po yung conclusion ninyo. Pero ngayon, wala po kayong masasabi
Because
na meron nga.
as we have declared before, all our files were transferred to the SPB as required under the sale transaction.
Yun
That's
nga
why
po
we
kasi
cannot-
nga, ang sinasabi natin, bago naman ma-transfer lahat sa SPB na yan, di ba, ano ba sinasabi ng SPB? Kinakailangan within 180 days o kalahating taon, yun lamang after the maturity para pumasok doon sa SPB. Napaka tagal na po na panahon yun. Kaya nga, kung may papakita nyo lang sana sa akin ngayon, meron kayo talagang ginawang mga sulat na seryoso talaga na pinag-uusapan po natin 1.6 billion. Example lamang po yun, di pa po yung kaganapan ng lahat ng pinag-uusapan. Ang tinatanong po kasi namin, makita lang namin sana mula sa inyo yung talaga pagsakitan ninyo na singilin. Kasi kung wala po yun, medyo nakapagdududa po.
Sir, sending collection letters is really part of the operating procedure. Unfortunately, as we said, although we want to present those collection letters, all records have been transferred already.
Okay, ganun na lang po ang isasagot nyo talaga sa amin. Kapag hindi po nagbayad ang debtor, ano na po yung first name nyo?
Romeo Aguilar pa.
Mr. Aguilar, pag hindi po nagbayad yung debtor, kunyari si debtor X, 1.6 billion, ano po? Itatrato po ninyo ito under the GAAP income. Dahil yung credit balance po nun ng loans payable ay kailangang isara o i-debit at ibabangga mo sa isang credit account na income. Tama? Sa panig po ng debtor ito, hindi nagbayad eh. So i-debit mo income po, tama? Hindi po ako accountant, kayo po mga accountant kayo. Dapat mabilis ang sagot, oo.
That may be true if you're writing off a loan.
Eh, sabi nga
That's
nyo,
not-
hindi nyo nire-write off.
Oo nga po,
Ngayon nire-write off
as
mo na, kanina ayaw mong i-write off eh.
No, based po sa understanding ko,
O
nung
sige,
sinabi
ganito
niyo,
po, ganito, para madali. Yung loan po ay first recorded as a liability.
It's an asset, sir.
Sandali lang.
Loan is
Hindi,
an
sandali
asset.
lang. It is first recorded as a liability, but since it doesn't need to pay anymore, wala nga, hindi ka na nga makasingil eh. Then the liability has to be reclassified as income under the GAAP. Ang sinasabi ko is generally accepted accounting principle.
Intindihan ko na
Tama.
po kayo.
Tama.
It is a liability at the book of the borrower.
Precisely, kaya ganun po eh. Ngayon,
Opo.
dahil hindi niya nababayaran, ang epekto lamang po gusto kong ipalitawin dito. In effect, yung debtor ay na-enrich, undue enrichment by not paying back the loan extended to him. Ganun na magiging conclusion.
I doubt, sir. Sorry.
You doubt it?
Yeah, because it will be against the accounting rules. They have to have a document saying that the lender condoned or has written off before they can book that as an income.
Pero hindi ikaw ang magja-justify noon. Hindi ikaw ang nangutang. DBP ka. Pupuntahan kita mamaya.
Okay, so it's a decision of the borrower to write it off in its own books and recognize that as an income. Wala pong kinalaman ng bangko doon.
O kaya nga, ito ngayon, may kinalaman ka na rito. Dahil hindi mo makolekta ang utang, ililipat mo yung credit balance ng loans receivable sa debit account na ang tawag mo ay loss. Kapag nalugi, di ba, maapektuhan ang buhay ng DBP. Kaya nga nagkaroon ng SBP, yun ang pangsaklolo sa buhay mo. Ngayon, imbes na i-write off o i-debit na account, pag imbes na i-write off, ang i-debit na account ay cash. Kasi nga, pumasok na yung Lehman Brothers, di ba? Dahil ibebenta mo na sa SBP. O ligtas na ngayon ang DBP. Kaya lang, ito ang problema. Bakit hindi naningil, ba't hindi mo siningil yung utang niya nung una pa? Nandito sa loan agreement ang problema ninyo kasi kailangan nga nating malaman yon. Kaya kanina pa sinasabi ko, Mr. Chair, sugarcoating lang yung sinasabi ninyo na derecognition dahil ang epekto talaga ang hindi pagsingil ng utang, write-off talaga yon o kaya condonation kung pag-uusapan na yung book of accounts nung nangutang sa'yo. Ang nangyari, kagaya ng pinaliwanag ni Kong Mike kanina, lugi pa rin ang gobyerno. Kasi yung siningil mo sa kanya, ang naibayad sa yung recoverable amount lang. Di ba? Yung price nung pagkaka-transfer sa kanya. Pero maliwanag na utang yon. Dahil maliwanag na utang yon at hindi talaga nakolekta, ang magiging problema, kagaya ng na-insinuate na kanina, Mr. Chair, kaya gusto naming makita yung loan agreement kasi this is grossly disadvantageous to the government. Kayo ang nagpasok ng ganong agreement, lalong-lalo na kung mayroong makitang kakutsabahan dito. And then you will be liable. Kasi
Pabukas ng ilaw.
sino nagbubukas ng ilaw, Mr. Chair? Si Joey Salcedo ba yun? Talagang magulo yung tao na yun. Talagang matatalo ang pamahalaan dito, Mr. Chair. At saka, wag na nating sabihin na wala kayong representasyon dun sa...
Deputy Speaker Marcoleta, can I just interject? When you
Yes,
speak
sir.
of kutsabahan,
sige.
kasi ngayon talagang kailangan yung safeguard is we should avoid fraud, of course collusion. But I see that those debtors are passive participants in this financial transaction. Ang sinasabi mo bang kutsabahan doon sa DBP, between DBP and the winning investor? Or kasama yung debtor?
Ang sinasabi ko, this is not a conclusion yet, no? Inconclusive to, kaya ang gusto nating makita yung loan agreement eh. Kagaya ng napapalitaw na kanina, maliwanag naman na meron JSS pala. Mukha lang sapagkat dahil sa kisig ng mukha, talaga na may pera 'yon. Si Mike, palagay ko, walang masyadong pera ito. Hindi naman napapakita sa mukha. Baka ikaw, Congressman Pido. Pagkatapos tatanggalin nga yung pinakakondisyon na kung saan doon lang nakasalig yung kapalaran na makakasingil ka pa sa kanila. So tingnan natin yung loan agreement. Maliban pa doon sa mga naipakita na sa atin, siguro, Mr. Chair, baka pati mga subsidiary ledgers pwedeng makuha rito o their equivalents para lang makita natin. Kasi bakit sa kabila ng napakaraming panahon, sa ngayon sinasabi nila, kinukonklud lang Mr. Chair na meron naman po siguro, that is an assumption. Naningil naman po siguro, palagay ko naman katakot-takot na kahung-kahon na mga demand letters o iba pang mga klaseng instrument ang ginamit para lang ma-recover. Hindi po eh. Parang nga lumilitaw, hinayaan lang hanggang pumasok yung SPB para lang, ayun naman pong SPB po yung pumasok para lang maisalba ang banking system, Mr. Chair. Yung mga IPs parang mga junk shop ito na sila yung sumagot eh. Hindi po ganito siguro yung pinakamotibo ng batas. Ang nakikita po kasi namin dito, maaaring nagkulang din ang central bank dito dahil malalaking po ito eh, malalaking utang po ito eh. Until and unless, Mr. Chair, DBP is able to prove na unang-una talaga bang siningil ninyo? Talaga bang seryoso ang pagkakasingil? Pagkatapos bigla na lang pumasok po yung SPB. Okay na po tayo rito. Kahit na maisalya na lang natin ang ganito, yun nga po, kulang pa sa book value. Pero ang talong-talo po, Mr. Chair, talaga, ay yung taong bayan. Salamat po muna at saka papasok ako mamaya pag natapos na po yung iba.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to add, for Maynila, before we sold the loan to SPB, our collection totals 890 million. So there was payment.
890 million from those loans.
From Maynilad lang po.
Maynilad.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Honorable Defensor.
Yes.
Is
Mr.
this
Mis-
your second round?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Aguilar,
20 minutes.
may mga sinasabi kayo nasingil ninyo, may ganitong nasingil. Pero mali ho yung binabanggit ninyo kasi may cost of money kayo, may interest yan, may penalties yan. Yung pinahiram mo na 10 piso, di ba? Tapos sinabi mo nakakolekta kang 8 pesos, pero dapat 30 pesos na yan, lugi ka. Dahil yan ang negosyo nyo eh, negosyo ng bangko. So do not confuse the people, huwag nyo linlangin ng tao na nakasingil kayo. Kaya nga 9 billion ang book value ninyo. Winave nyo na nga, pinakita ko kanina eh. Nag-waive na nga kayo ng penalties, mga default. So, is that the situation, Mr. Aguilar? Tama pa ba yung sinasabi ko? Diba, in the case of Maynilad, magkano yung outstanding nung ibinenta ninyo? 1.5 billion, sorry, 710.
711 million.
Magkano nyo ho binenta?
Na 618
618.
plus the collection of 889, so exceeded the principal. So there's excess.
No. Ano yung book value niya nung ibinenta nyo?
The net carrying value is 500.
Do not say the
25.
net carrying value.
Because that's in the book, sir.
Yeah, pero pagka binenta mo yan, without SPAV, hindi ka pwede magbenta. Okay, before I go to you, tanungin ko muna. Again, Ms. Cube, you already replied to this, but I'd like to ask legal. Pagka po ba sa SPAV law, attorney, kailangan po ba na magkaroon ng certificate of eligibility bago nilalagay sa isang special purpose vehicle?
Attorney Lagadio.
Nagsalita na po si Ms. Cube dyan, but sa inyo po, sa legal ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
Attorney Regadio, please respond. Please on your mic, sir.
As embedded, as we mentioned a while ago, this PAB law requires that there has to be certificate of eligibility. And for the BSP to issue the certificate of eligibility, there has to be compliance with the requirements. That's why, Mr. Chair, there are only two entities that were given, assets rather, that were given certificate of eligibility. The rest
Yes,
were not
attorney.
given.
Thank you. So, wag na ho natin pag-usapan ng DBP. Pagka po ang isang financial institution, in particular government financial institution, naglagay po siya sa SPAV nang walang eligibility ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, illegal po yun.
If you are going to look at that situation, that you are going to avail, Mr. Chair, of
Yes.
the incentives of the perks of the SPAB, it must be within the parameters of the SPAB. Meaning, if you are not going to make use of those perks, of those privileges, you are not supposed to make use of the SPAB law.
So are you
That's why
saying...
there are other laws that you can make use, but not the incentives provided in the SPAB, Mr.
Agree.
Chair.
So, pinag-uusapan po natin, for example, pag-ibig. Walang SPAB. May mga loan account siya. 1 bilyon. Binenta niya ng 400 million. Book value niya, 1 bilyon. Yung po ba, illegal o legal? Hindi niya ginamit ang SPAB.
I cannot make a declaration
No.
that's legal or illegal, Mr.
No,
Chair,
okay.
because
What I'm saying is, kasi ang pinupunto mo ngayon, attorney, pag mag-avail ka lang ng incentive, dun ka lang gagamit ng eligibility. Ang
Yes.
contention ko, based on the law, based on the contract, hindi. Dahil ang sinasabi, pag ginamit mo ang SPAV law, kailangan mo siyang magkaroon ng certificate of eligibility. Dahil nagbebenta kang palugi. So ulitin ko yung tanong ko. Pag ginamit mo ang SPAV law, government ka, bangko, land bank, SSS, GSIS, pag-ibig, hindi ka nagkaroon ng eligibility. Binenta mo ng palugi. Is that legal or not? Kasi ang kiniklaim mo na ngayon is eligibility. That was the claim of DBP. I'm sorry to say, tingin ko, mali po yun. So ulitin ko yung tanong ko, para lang klaro. Binenta nila ang dalawang accounts. Walang eligibility sa inyo. Ginamit nila SPAV. Legal po yun o illegal?
What I can say, Mr. Chair, is there is non-compliance with
There
the SPAB
is
law. There is non-compliance with the SPAB law.
non-compliance with the SPAV law.
But
Okay.
I cannot say that it's illegal or
Okay.
illegal.
Because dapat ang korte magdesisyon tungkol doon.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Apo, ombudsman ang dapat magdesisyon doon. If ever, may case ng graft and corruption.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, yan yung binabalik ko ngayon, Mr. Aguilar. Babalik ako dun sa sinasabi ko sa inyo. Ang sinasabi ninyo, may iba kayong pamamaraan. Kaya nga binabalik ko, ganito ba ang gawain ng DBP na mga non-performing loans ninyo pwede nyong ibenta ng palugi?
Okay. Just to if I may explain. So if a loan enters into a classified account, NPL, the probability of full collection decreases. The risk of non-collection increases. So that's why.
Mr. Chair, before we proceed, have the resource persons here taken their oath? Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I
Yes.
took my oath earlier, sir.
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
So the banks at this point has to find ways to collect full interest and capital. So we enter into a remedial management situation.
Pero hindi ibig sabihin, Mr. Aguilar, kasi ganito po ginawa ninyo eh. May SPAB law. Ang SPAB, pinayagan tayong lahat para magkaroon ng insentibo. Para mayroon tayong mga taxes hindi natin babayaran, mapabilis. Para sa ating financial institutions, particular sa gobyerno, pwede tayong makabenta ng mura. Yan ho ang pagpayad ng SPAB. Ang ginawa ninyo, in-apply ninyo sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas yung mga loans ninyo na SPAB. Yung 2.5 billion, hindi niya binigyan ng eligibility. Wala kayong compliance under the law. Pero, inilagay nyo pa rin sa ilalim ng SPAB at binenta nyo ng mura.
But we didn't avail of any tax incentive with respect to 2.5.
Totoo. Hindi ko sinasabi sa inyo na may tax incentive ng 2.5. Ang sinasabi ko sa inyo, yung pagbenta nyo ng 2.5 na maaaring binenta nyo ng 1B dahil hindi natin makompute. Pero more or less, ganun ang ginawa kong generalization, binenta nyo ng palugi. Ginamit nyo yung batas, supposedly, para makabenta ng mura, pero gina-justify ninyo na hindi, wala namang incentive. Pero yan, illegal yan. Magtanong ka, Mr. Aguilar, sa counterpart mo sa GSIS. Magtanong ka sa SSS, National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation, sa NHA, when it was still a corporation, sa Pag-ibig, lahat yan, at Land Bank, magsasabi sa iyo, bawal. Counterpart mo yan. Government financial institutions yan. Lahat ng yan magsasabi sa inyo, bawal. Pero kung nilagay yan sa SPAB, pwede. Pero itong 2.5 na to, illegal to. Illegal to, Mr. Chair. Attorney of the legal of BSP, Attorney Legadio. Attorney Legadio already said, walang compliance sa Special Purpose Vehicle Law. So, kiniklaim ninyo, you can do otherwise. Hindi naman pwedeng gamitin ang SPAB. Oo. Pero iba na ang mag-govern na rule sa inyo.
Assignment of credit sa civil law.
Paano?
Assignment of credit, sir. Under our loan agreements, there's a provision that we can assign, sell our loan.
Yes. Bahala kayong mag-usap dung pinautang ninyo. Kasi di ba pinautang ninyo itong mga kumpanya, XYZ. Pero kayo mismo, yung pinanghawakan yung accounts na meron diyang default, meron diyang penalty, may principal, may interest, hindi nyo pwedeng ibenta ng palugi kung hindi nyo gagamitin ang SPAB law. At sa kaso na to, na ginamit nyo yung SPAB law at binenta nyo yung palugi, wala kayong eligibility. Ang ibig sabihin, sa ilalim ng batas, hindi kayo pinayagan. Illegal po yan.
Interject, Mr.
No,
Chair.
Mr. Chair, just a klaro pa.
Baka makalimutan ko eh.
Oh, sige, go ahead.
Meron pala kayong assignment of credit sa loan agreement. Bakit pinasok niyo pa sa SPAB?
Because sir, the transaction itself is sale, assignment, transfer.
Hindi nga civil code ang sinabi mo eh.
Opo.
Civil code is a general law. Yung SPAB is a special law. Hindi mo naman pwedeng gamitin lahat yon. Kaya nakikita namin parang pabali-baligtad ang sagot mo eh. Parang meron kayong sariling
If
sistema.
if
Kanina
you-
lumulusot ka, ang sinasabi mo, yung loan agreement mo, under the civil code, pwede mo yung assign. Dahil assignment of credits. Pero tinangka mo na rin na sumubok ka sa SPAB law. Kanya lang, sabi ng central bank, non-compliant ka. So hindi ko maintindihan kung paano mo pananagutan yan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Yes, Marcoleta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, ang sinasabi ko po dito, Mr. Chair, kaya nga kinaklara ko dito na establish natin yung batas. Pag ginamit mo yung SPAB law, gumamit ka ng eligibility. Ngayon, hindi ko inaalis sa inyo, pwede kayong magbenta. But you have to contend with the book value. Pwede, under our law, may condonation tayo, interest, may mga default payments, pwede mong tanggalin. Ginawa nyo nga yun eh. Nag-waiver kayo, 144 million, tinanggal nyo. Pwede yun. Pero kailangan pa rin bayaran yung kabuwang utang sa ilalim ng inyong libro. Ngayon, babalik ako doon sa sinasabi. Mr. Chair, kaklaro ko lang ulit ha, maraming debate doon sa write-off, condonation, and so on and so forth. Establish natin, Mr. Aguilar, ito ay loss. Lugi in Tagalog.
Correct, sir.
O, yun lang po. So, klaro na yun sa akin kasi pasensya na ninyo na po, Mr. Chair, at marami sa amin, hindi naman kami bankero eh. Diba? Yung condonation, yung write-off, there are different meanings to the words being used in relation to the banking system. Pero yung lugi, klaro po yan. So, nalugi tayo ng 6 na bilyon, pero dahil sa libro nyo nga, sinabi nyo, pwede namin i-charge to dahil pinapayagan naman ng aming charter na i-charge ito sa operations. Tama po ba? Tama po, Mr. Aguilar?
Tama po.
So, Mr. Chair, again, I go back to my statement. Tama ang Pangulo all the while. May ganitong nangyari at may ganitong sitwasyon. Nalugi ang DBP ng 6 na bilyon. Yung sinasabi niya may mga nagbenepisyo, that has to be seen. Simple lang naman po yan eh. Magkano na ibenta later ng mga kumpanya yung pagkakautang sa na makikita mo yung gain. Pero yun po para sa akin ibang usapin eh. Kasi para bang sa SPAB law, may sugal tayo eh. Dahil nga masyadong malaki na yung pinanghawakan nating mga utang na hindi gumagalaw, so sumusugal tayo sa SPV. Makabawi tayo and magamit ulit ang pera paikutin, bumalik ang kita. Tama ba, Mr. Aguilar? Ganyan nangyari.
Tama po.
So, again, having said that, Mr. Chair, I think very clear and established yung findings natin dito ngayon na may ganito tayong mga sitwasyon at may ganitong pangyari under the loans executed by the DBP. At ito yung kailangan nating bantayan. Number 1, paano nagkakaroon ng availment of loans? Hindi na ho pwede natin payagan itong walang collateral at hindi protected. Sabi ng BSP kanina, we leave it to DBP. But I think now certain guidelines have to be there. Because in this particular case, 1 billion is 1 billion. Umutang ka, wala kang collateral, yung kaisa-isang collateral mo na garantiya ng mga umuupong board, tinanggal mo pa. Tapos tama ba, Mr. Aguilar? Ang pagbayad ng utang nito, 7 beses in-extend. Pinagbigyan para maayos.
Confirm that, sir. I don't.
I'm confirming it. I have the records that you have 7 extensions of the loan. Attorney Garland, would you like to reply to that? Okay, Mr. Chair. So that's my first point. My second point is, yung pong pagpasok sa SBP, sa Special Purpose Vehicle. Klaro ho, dapat magkaroon ng compliance sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas as provided by law. Malinaw yung batas. Wala naman sinabing kondisyon eh. Ang sinasabi ng batas, pag ginamit mo Special Purpose Vehicle, i-enroll mo yan sa amin, i-approve namin yan. Ngayon, outside of the SPV law, gusto niyo magbenta ng loans ninyo, kung ano bang assets ninyo, okay lang yan. Pero may book value kayo dyan. May bidding kayo dyan. Merong baseline. Kumbaga, pinakamababang presyo na pwede niyong ibenta. Pangatlo, Mr. Chair, klaro po doon sa binanggit ko kanina, maraming dokumento na akong pinakita rito na hindi binigay sa atin. Yan, Mr. Chair, malaking misteryo sa akin yan. Kasi, marami tayong kausap dito sa committee, kahit kayo, narinig ko yung mga tanong ninyo, Yung mga proponents ng resolution nagtatanong, bakit wala tayong dokumentong ganito? Why is it being kept from us? Bakit tinatago? Tingin ko unfair sa mga kasamahan natin, nag-aaral, binabasa ang kapal ng mga dokumento na para tayong nililigaw.
Hindi kasi
Yan ang
tayo,
mas malaking issue sa akin, Mr. Chair.
hindi kasi tayo bankero, Mr. Chair. Pero pinapayagan natin ang TVP na mamangka sa dalawang ilog.
Ayun, Mr. Chair. Kung ano mang ibig sabihin nung namamangka sa dalawang ilog, pero
Ang SPAB, pagkatapos meron pa sang assignment of credit. Pero kahit anong gawin mo, palugi pa rin.
eto mga pinakita kong dokumento, Mr. Chair, marami dyan. Wala sa submission na binigay ng Development Bank of the Philippines. And I'd like to call the attention of the committee because there are documents being withheld. Marami pa akong papakita, Mr. Chair, na mga dokumento regarding all this investigation. But I hope
Sana
that
pakita
DBP...
mo na next hearing.
Yes, Mr. Chair. But I showed the...
Yeah,
the-
I saw it.
Yes, the essential documents, Mr. Chair. Pero sa akin naman, wag naman ganun na parang kailangan tayo, mabuti lang, there are consensus employees within the Development Bank of the Philippines na talagang merong pinanghawakan mga dokumento. Dahil sinabi ko na nga noon pa, matagal na tong isyong to at may mga dokumentong nandyan. Sana naman, Mr. Chair, lahat ng dokumentong to, ilabas na nila, ipakita sa mga kasama natin dito. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Defensor.
Mr. Chair, Attorney Garland.
Yes, Attorney Garland.
We would like to assure the honorable committee, sir, that the DBP is the board of directors of DBP is very much cooperative in this investigation, sir. And in fact, they have authorized the disclosure of these voluminous documents, sir. And if ever we missed out on a few items, sir, we will be willing to
Yeah,
provided they
take note,
are
there's an
in relation
there's
to this
a
investigation, sir.
after this hearing, can you leave a person who will receive the subpoena for the next compliances for documents? Maybe the speaker will sign it around 3 o'clock. Can you leave somebody who will sign it on your behalf?
Mr.
You are here. You are 5 people here. Maybe you can leave a person. Is that all right?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Garland. So, recognize the Honorable Garbin.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Now, Maynilad is now owned by another entity. Used to be owned by the Lopez
Yes,
Group,
now it's owned
including
by the Metro Pacific.
yeah, including Bayantel is now owned by
Globe.
Now, when the sale transpired, does that include not only that of the assets but also the liabilities?
We referred the question to the new owner, the Globe, and the new owner of Maynilad.
Will they be invited in the
They're
next?
here. They're here. They're here now. On Zoom.
Tanungin natin, yung may-ari ngayon ng Maynilad at ng Globe Telecoms.
Mr. Randolph Estrellado, COO of Maynilad. There is a question for you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, when the sale transpired as to Maynilad, does that include not only that of the assets but also includes the liabilities of the previous owner?
Yes, sir. When the new owners, Metro Pacific and DMCI, in 2006 December, acquired Maynilad, we acquired the whole company, including all of its debts, na at the time was under debt rehab. So we took over the company and we repaid all of the debts.
Bayad na ho to lahat.
Bayad na ho lahat.
How about Bayantel with regard to
Mr.
Globe?
Representative.
Magkano? Bago yung Globe magsumagot. Magkano binayaran?
Sir, kasi sama-sama ho sa isang, yung tinatawag na DCRA, yung pinakita ho kanina ni Congressman Defensor, isa hong pakete ho yun ng rehab loan. Nandun ho yung peso loans, tinatawag na bridge loans, may mga dollar loans. In total ho, parang $241 million ho yun na binayaran namin.
In peso, magkano ho yun?
Nung time na yun ho, 48 yata ho ang exchange rate. So,
Sky Cable na lang.
So 241 times 48, mga 11.5 billion ho.
Yung
Binayaran
kabuuan
ho
na
namin.
binayaran?
Opo.
Saan nyo ho binayad?
Doon ho sa mga creditors na kasama ron sa rehab package o DCRA, kasama ho doon yung tinatawag ng yung Philippine
PI1, PI2.
Ay, kasama ho yun sa mga listahan ng binayaran namin.
Okay. Yung Globe?
Globe is not here anymore. Maybe Sky Cable, President Ventosa. You can propound the question.
But Sky Cable is still owned by the Lopezes, right? Oh, tanungin lang natin.
Kung anong ginawa sa mga loan.
Yeah.
Your Honor. The loans were the loan was paid by Sky Cable in full to PI1, who assumed the loan from DBP.
And it was good already. Bayad na ho lahat.
Yes, it's been paid in 2011, January 2011.
Thank you. Globe wala na, no?
Wala na. Okay, no more interpolations. May I recognize?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
the Honorable Ominal, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Although I came in late, but I had registered to avail on the first round. Although, Mr. Chair, my inquiry, this is addressed to the chair. It can be established based on the presentation of the author that there is really a malfeasance or a commission or violations of existing law with that specific office of the DBP. Under our role, Section 1, which vests jurisdiction to the committee, so this violation shall be specified what office that violated, and this is DBP. There's a specific provision here that it must be identified who committed, who are the officers and employees, in this case, DBP, who committed such violations or irregularities. I'm raising that, Mr. Chair, because under Section 8 of our role, this is already the order of hearing, which I presume this is now the stage of the inquiry. We are now under Section 8. It's very clear here that the adverse party shall then be, after the author, shall be given the opportunity to adduce evidence in support of the allegations, which the author, the Honorable Defensor, has sufficiently adduced some evidence to support the allegations. Then it is pleasure that the adverse party shall then be given the opportunity to adduce evidence in support. So may we know who are the persons or officers liable to this, so that they will be notified in order that under the due process. And then because as I listen from now, those that are summoned today or invited are still resource speakers. They are not yet adverse party. So may I be clarified on this matter, Mr. Chair?
Yes, the first and second hearing was determination of preliminary determination if there is evidence, and we here in the present here now think there is. So in the next hearing, we will invite the members of the board and senior officers during that time. We already issued invitation for those board in 2000, anong 2000 yun?
So Mr. Chair, the
we
board
already issued invitations for the board and senior officers for 2000 and
Mr. Chair, the invitation that you will issue to those officers and members of the board, they are already indicated as adverse party of this case.
Yes.
No longer as resource speakers.
No longer.
Okay. So they are already identified, Mr. Chair. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just wishing that because the adverse party, the officers and employees should be afforded that due process, so that in our findings later on, they cannot question that they have not been afforded such opportunity to present their side. Because the ones that are answering questions now are just resource speakers. They are not the adverse party of the case.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, DS Omenal. And let me remind the COMSEC to invite those in the minutes of the meeting listed, the officers and the board. There are around, I think there are around 12 board of directors and 7 other people there, officers. So, but there is one now that passed away, the president. So we cannot, we just invite the others. So, is there any matter?
Mr. Chair.
Congresswoman Dindi, you are recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chair, good afternoon. Mr. Chair, quick manifestation lang sana. Mr. Chair, may I inquire if an invitation has already been extended to the Lehman Brothers or the entity now which would subsequently acquired it? Kasi Mr. Chair, based on our research, and the earlier pronouncement of the chair, the Lehman Brothers was acquired by Nomura Holdings Incorporated. So Mr. Chair, from our hearing today kasi it appears that the presence of the SPV or Nomura Holdings or Lehman Brothers is absolutely indispensable to resolve the current issues. Apparently, they happen to have a possession of the documents essential to our inquiry, such as the original loan documents and has the actual knowledge of how the loans were eventually settled. So, Mr. Chair, may we respectfully ask Nomura Holdings to be invited and to bring this document?
Actually, Nomura Holdings bought the Asia Pacific business after the dissolution of the Lehman Brothers.
Yes.
This is after already they sold it to PI1 and PI2. So the proper party is only PI1, PI2.
PI2.
Yes, that we have just gotten there. During the first hearing, we asked the assistance of DBP to get the address, and they give the address now. So we will invite them for the next hearing. If they do not go, we will ask the assistance of the NBI to locate the officers of PI1 and PI2.
Okay,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, po.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Congressman Aresco.
A clarification lang, Mr. Chair. DBP mentioned earlier that their net carrying value or book value was higher than what was sold. From what point of view, which balance sheet, Mr. Chair? Was it Maynila the book value or DBP book value? Because as I understand, being an accountant, Mr. Chair, that should include the amortization payments to be made by the borrowing party, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Congressman Aresco. Let us direct the question to VP Romeo Aguilar.
What I'm talking earlier, sir, about the net carrying value is in DBP's books. So the net carrying value of Maynila is 524, and the proceeds from the sale of the loan of Maynila was 618 million. So it's higher than the net book value.
Mr. Chair, did the DBP include the amortization due, Mr. Chair?
That's the total principal before APL is 710.
So wala dyan yung interest?
That's the amount of outstanding principal when it was sold. And if we include the allowance for probable losses of 186 million, the net carrying value is 524 million.
That's including amortization payments, Mr. Chair?
The payment received at the time of sale amounted to 889 million, sir.
The payment received. So the book value should be the principal plus amortization. Mr. Chair,
I'm just
hindi ko maintindihan, Mr. Chair, kasi ako no, na may utang ako sa DBP, ang bayad ko sa take-out almost 300%. Kasi ayaw ng DBP na i-waive yung penalties at saka interest payments. Dito, Mr. Chair, ay I support the position of Congressman Mike Defensor. Medyo
Sa
yata
tingin
yung book
ko,
value.
Honorable Haresco, yung face value mo hindi sing taas ng face value ng Lopez Group. Kaya nakakuha sila ng special arrangement.
Face value. Mr. Chair, second manifestation, Mr. Chair. Why did DBP lend to one of the wealthiest corporations in the Philippines in the first place, Mr. Chair? Because at that time, the Lopez's owned Meralco, Mr. Chair.
TBP, can you answer? Siguro kay Office of the Rosemary Kinlantang.
Yeah, good afternoon. I head the Special Assets Group of DBP. We are the ones who are solving the problem accounts of DBP. So why we lent to the Lopez Group, we should remember that the mandate of DBP is to provide long-term financing for infrastructure, telecommunications, and government for the development of the country. So, yeah. So, based on the credit standards of DBP, when there was a funding requirement from the Lopez Group, and it was found that they met the credit standards of DBP. I suppose that's why the loan was granted.
Mr. Chair.
So that
Yes,
was in
yes,
fulfillment.
Congressman Aresco.
Yes, that has been the generic answer of DBP, Mr. Chair, for development. Pero they are lending to develop entities, Mr. Chair. My third question is, now, why did DBP in 2004 lend again $320 million to the C family for Maynila, Mr. Chair?
What is the question exactly, sir?
Ang sinasabi po ng DBP kasi for the development of infrastructure and telecom, and they led the Lopez Group because they were credited or they had the balance sheet to borrow. But then afterwards, after several years, DBP also provided assistance for the possible takeover of BDO or the C family on Maynilad. So second time nagpahiram na naman ang DBP for the takeover of Maynilad to some $300 million in 2004.
Are you aware the financing of the takeover of Maynilad? Is there
Yes.
such a loan?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but we are not aware of any attempt for takeover of Maynilad.
Congressman Haresco, they're not aware of this transaction you are mentioning?
Well, maybe, Mr. Chair, we can ask for more documents, Mr. Chair, on the loan portfolio to several, to the top 5 corporations, Mr. Chair. My last point, Mr. Chair, the board of DBP and the board of the Lopez Group, can we look into the backgrounds? Because earlier, Congressman Defensor and Marcoleta hinted on the possible graft and corruption. Maybe, Mr. Chair, there are some personal linkages between the board of DBP and the board of the Lopez Group, Mr. Chair.
We will ask the board. They are not here, so I think those here are the present management group, management committee of DBP, only VP Romeo Aguilar was involved in the transaction before. So let us withhold your questions for the next hearing, Honorable Haresco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
I'm sorry. Klaro lang po. Can I ask Maynilad again? Yes. Mr.
Estrellado.
Estrellado. So, Mr. Estrellado, you are now with Maynilad Pangilinan Group.
Yes, sir.
Gusto ko lang ho iklaro kasi nabanggit nyo kanina yung pag-buyout nyo. Binili nyo po sa Lopez yung utang.
Hindi ho.
Yung buong kampanya.
Binili nyo po yung buong kumpanya ng Lopez.
Yes.
Hindi na ho siya sa Lopez. Kasi ho, nagkaroon ho ng debt, tinatawag na DCRA or Debt and Credit
Rehabilitation,
Capital Restructuring Agreement. Ang nangyari ho doon, sinurrender na ho ng Benpres yung lahat ng shares nila doon sa Maynilad. Tapos, ang binenta ho ng gobyerno sa amin, yung receivables ng MWSS sa Maynilad. Tapos kinonvert sa equity ng Maynilad. So, wala ho kaming transaction with Lopez.
Yes. Iklaro ko lang po paano po nangyari? Di ba nasa SPV na po yung utang. Binenta na ng DBP.
Opo.
Nandun na po sa SPV. Of course, ang mayroon pa rin hawak nun, Lopez. Dahil sila yung nagbabayad dun sa mapupunta sa kanila yung responsibilidad ng paniningil sa Lopez. Not unless magkaroon ng failure ang Lopez Group.
Yung kasi ho yung Maynilad na kumpanya, nag-i-exist pa ho nung in-acquire namin. Pero ang humahawak na ho nung panahon na yon MWSS na. So may mga utang ho ang Maynilad sa iba-ibang kumpanya, bangko, kasama na nga yung pati DBP na na-transfer doon sa SPV. Nung in-acquire ho, nung binenta ho ng gobyerno yung ng gobyerno yung Maynilad, kami na ho yung naging may-ari ng Maynilad at kami yung nagbayad ng mga utang ng Maynilad.
Mr. Chair, nagugulan lang ako ng konti. Pagpapasensya na po, no? Because from the DBP, napunta na po sa special purpose vehicle. Paano pong nabalik sa gobyerno?
Yung kumpanya ho ng Maynilad, hindi ho yung utang. Yung utang ho ng Maynilad, utang pa rin ng Maynilad. Ang binili ho namin yung kumpanyang Maynilad.
Yung binili niyo po ng kumpanyang Maynilad, pati na po yung mga obligasyon nila,
Opo.
inayos niyo po.
Opo.
So, yung kumpanya ng Maynilad, at the time na binili niyo, Lopez pa rin ang nagmamay-ari. At least, no, yung shares na binili niyo.
Sinurrender na ho nila sa sa MWSS. Kung para hong nagkaroon ng write-down, zero value na ho sila. Effectively, ang may-ari ng Maynilad nung panahon na yon, MWSS na. Pero receivables lang ho. Kasi dapat, i-convert nila yung receivables nila sa Maynilad at maging shares. Di sana MWAS na sana ang may-ari sa Maynilad. Pero imbis na gawin nila yon, binenta na lang nila. So kami na lang din yung pumuno nung receivables ng MWSS. So kami na yung naging may-ari ng Maynilad at kami na yung nagbayad ng mga utang nito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Defensor. Before we end, I'd like to ask one clarification lang from the President of the Lopez Group, Mr. Tirona.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I'd like to ask a clarification lang doon sa press conference ni Presidential Spokesperson Harry Roque. Sabi niya doon binili niyo daw ulit yung mga NPAs, collaterals. At so did you hear of that statement?
Yes, I heard about that the press conference
Can you expound on that? What was that? What did you do? What did the Lopez Group do?
Actually, sir, there probably must have been a misunderstanding on the part of during that press conference. Actually, what happened is the loans, like in this case, the loans of DBP, were sold to an SPV. And after that, we negotiated with the SPV together with the other creditors of our different companies and settled our loans with the SPV and the other banks. Okay. So in this case, Your Honor, there was really no repurchase by the Lopezes of what they termed as the assets.
So
So it was a settlement. It's a settlement of the loans with the new holder of the loans that came from DBP.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
what would be the settlement of loans with the creditors as stated? Now, for example, yung pong sa utang sa Maynilad with DBP, how much was it settled with the SPV, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Tirona, can you answer the query
Yes,
of
Mr. Chair. Actually, sir, like for example, in the case of Maynilad, as mentioned by the representative of Maynilad, there was already a rehabilitation that was being implemented by Maynilad together with the MWSS. So in that rehabilitation, the Lopezes, or Ben Press, who's the major investor of Maynilad, we had to surrender our investment in Maynilad together with whatever advances we had to the corporation. And that meant that we had to let go of 4.4 billion pesos in investments and advances. So with the surrender of our shares or interest in Maynilad, following the rehabilitation court decision, MWSS took over Maynilad together with the restructuring of the loans that were still with Maynilad, the corporation. And that paved the way, Mr. Chairman, to the reprivatization of Maynilad, or the water concession, by MWSS. And that's when the group of Mr. Pangilinan entered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that. Anyway, that is another phase of what happened. But thank you for that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Defensor. So there is no more matter to be discussed. May I remind the resource persons, especially DBP, to comply with the requested submission and to take note of the suggestions and recommendations of the members. We will follow up on these matters through our committee secretariat. Maraming salamat po. Is there a motion to suspend?
Motion to suspend.
Mr. Chair.
Second the motion.
The meeting is now suspended. Maraming salamat po aking mga kasama sa committee at ang ating mga panauhin sa inyong suporta at kooperasyon sa mga gawain ng Kongreso.